Listen. Can you hear it? The rain, tapping against the glass like skeletal fingers, eager to get in. It's the kind of night that breathes shadows, the kind of night where the veil between worlds thins to a whisper. Welcome back, seekers of the shiver, to Nocturnal Nightmares TV. Tonight, we pull back that veil. We invite you to settle in, turn down the lights, and let the rhythm of the storm outside, or perhaps the storm within this recording, lull you into a place where comfort ends and true fear begins. We have a collection of tales for you this evening. Stories of games that should never have been played, of warnings tragically ignored, and of entities that hunger in the darkness, just waiting for an invitation. You'll meet friends who stumbled upon horrors beyond their imaginings, from cursed cabins and vengeful spirits to ancient evils lurking in forgotten places. Each drop of rain you hear tonight mirrors a tear shed, a life lost, a scream swallowed by the night. These aren't just campfire tales. They're echoes of what happens when curiosity strays too far into the shadows. And trust me, you will want to hear how these games end, or if they ever truly do. So, find your coziest, safest spot, though safety is merely an illusion tonight. Let us know in the comments which story sends the coldest chill down your spine, or if you've ever had an experience that mirrors these unsettling encounters. Don't forget to conjure that like button if you appreciate the darkness we weave. And if you haven't already, subscribe and ring that notification bell. You wouldn't want to miss what crawls out of the shadows next week.
They say money is the root of all evil. I used to think that was just a metaphor, a quaint saying. Now I know evil has a currency, and its price is paid in screams, in blood, in the torn flesh of your friends. We were 15 souls, young and dumb, full of cheap beer and the arrogant invincibility that only youth can provide. And we found a coin, just a single ancient coin. It looked like nothing. It was nothing until it hit the ground. Then it came, and it wanted to play. It was a Friday night in late October, the kind where the air bites with the promise of winter and the shadows stretch long and hungry. We'd been at the Rusty Mug, our town's less than glamorous dive bar, celebrating Liam's 19th birthday. There was the usual crew. Liam, our charismatic, if sometimes reckless, leader. His girlfriend Maya was sharp and grounded, usually the one to pull us back from the brink. Ben, my best friend since kindergarten, was quick with a joke, even when no one was laughing. Chloe is quiet and observant, with an artist's eye for detail. Noah, the walking encyclopedia, always spouting facts, often at the most inappropriate times. Sarah is kind and empathetic, the heart of our group. Jake, the jock, all bluster and bravado. His girlfriend Olivia is fierce and protective. Emily and Ethan are inseparable twins, always in sync and always up for anything. Then there was Sam, the worrier, who usually saw disaster around every corner. This time he'd be tragically right. His girlfriend Ava is free-spirited and a little wild. Daniel, the pragmatist, always looking for a logical explanation. and Freya, new to our group, eager to impress, a little too willing to go along with things. And me, Leo. I guess I was the storyteller, the one who always tried to find meaning. There was no meaning in what happened that night. Only horror. We were cutting through the old, disused part of Oak Haven Cemetery on our way home, a shortcut we'd taken 100 times, despite the lingering creepiness of the place. The moon was a pale, sickly sliver, offering little light, and our laughter echoed a little too loudly amongst the leaning tombstones. That's when Emily, one of the twins, stumbled. "Whoa!" she yelped, catching herself on Ethan. Tripped on something. She bent down, her phone flashlight illuminating the damp earth. "Hey guys, look at this!" It was a coin, lying half buried in the dirt, glinting faintly. It wasn't like any coin we'd ever seen. It was large, heavy, made of some dark tarnished metal. Not silver, not bronze, something else. One side depicted a leering, grotesque face with a wide, toothy grin and hollow eyes. The other side showed a complex, spiraling symbol, almost like a labyrinth with strange, spiky protrusions. It felt cold to the touch, unnaturally so, even on that chilly night. "Weird," Liam said, taking it from Emily. He tried to rub some of the tarnish off. "Wonder what it's worth." "Probably nothing," Noah chimed in, peering at it. "Likely some old Roman replica or a Victorian mourning token. The iconography is unsettling, though. That face almost looks like a gorgon, but not quite. And the spiral, it's reminiscent of certain pre-Celtic death cults." "Leave it to Noah." "Well, I found it, so it's mine," Emily declared. "No way! I saw it first when you pointed your light," Ethan, her twin, argued. "Actually," Jake swaggered, "I think finders keepers applies to whoever can take it." A playful scuffle nearly broke out. All right, settle down," Maya interjected, ever the peacemaker. "Let's be civilized. One coin, 15 of us. How do we decide who gets to keep this creepy-ass thing?" "Heads or tails," Ben suggested, grinning. "Or creepy face or weird swirl. We all call it in the air. Last one standing with the right call gets it." It seemed like a harmless enough solution. A stupid, drunken game to decide ownership of a weird piece of metal. If only we'd known. If only we'd just thrown it back into the dirt and run. Liam, being the birthday boy, got to do the honors. "Okay, call it in the air," he yelled, flicking the coin high into the murky air. "Face! Swirl! Heads! Tails!" The calls rained down. The coin arced, caught a sliver of moonlight, then began its descent. It landed with a soft thud in the damp grass near a weathered angel statue. We all crowded around, flashlights converging on the spot. It had landed swirl side up. About half of us had called it wrong. "Ha! Told ya!" Jake crowed, one of the swirl callers. But as he spoke, the ground beneath the coin began to tremble. Just a faint vibration at first, then stronger, like a deep subterranean heartbeat. The air grew heavy and thick, and a foul stench like rotting meat and sulfur filled our nostrils. The temperature plummeted, and our breath misted in front of us. The coin itself began to glow. Not a bright light, but a dull, sickly greenish luminescence, pulsing in time with the trembling ground. The spiraling symbol on its surface seemed to writhe, to deepen.
Then the earth in front of the angel statue cracked. A fissure opened, widening, deepening, and from that black, steaming chasm, something began to emerge. It was a nightmare made flesh. Tall, at least 8 feet, and hideously emaciated. Its skin the color of bruised plums, stretched taut over sharp, protruding bones. Its limbs were too long, jointed at unnatural angles, ending in claws like obsidian daggers. Its head was a grotesque parody of the face on the coin, a wide, lipless gash of a mouth filled with needle-sharp teeth, and eyes that were hollow, burning pits of an infernal green light mirroring the glow of the coin. It wore tattered, ancient-looking rags that seemed to be woven from shadows and despair. And in one skeletal hand, it clutched a larger, identical version of the coin we'd just tossed. It straightened to its full, terrifying height, its burning eyes sweeping over our stunned, terrified group. A low, guttural chuckle rumbled from its chest, a sound like stones grinding together. Then it spoke. Its voice was a rasp, a graveyard whisper, yet it filled the cemetery, filled our heads. The toss is made, it rasped, its lipless mouth stretching into a horrifying grin. The game is joined. You wished to play for a trifle. Now we play for real. No one moved. No one breathed. We were frozen, caught in a web of primal terror. The rules are simple, the creature continued, its gaze fixing on Liam, who still held the original coin, now cold and inert again. I toss my coin. It held up the larger glowing coin. You call heads or tails. It gestured to its own grotesque face, then to the swirling symbol on the other side of its coin. The loser of each toss I feast upon, limb by limb. A collective gasp, a strangled sob from someone, Chloe, I think. And lest you think of escaping, its grin widened, showing more of those needled teeth. It raised its free hand, and the shadows around us deepened, writhed, solidified into an impenetrable, pulsating wall, trapping us within a circle of ancient tombstones and this thing. No one escapes the Game Master. This couldn't be happening. It was a hallucination, a collective nightmare brought on by too much alcohol in a creepy setting. But the stench, the cold, the sheer palpable malevolence of the creature, it was too real. Liam, to his credit, found his voice first, though it trembled. Who? What are you? The creature chuckled again, that horrible grinding sound. I am the toll keeper, the debt collector, the player of the final game. You may call me Kale. Its burning eyes swept over us. Kale gestured with its clawed hand towards the group who had called the initial toss wrong. About 7 or 8 of us, including me, Ben, Sarah, and Noah. The first round belongs to those who lost the opening bid. Kale rasped, its gaze settling on Sam, the warrior, who was shaking so violently he looked like he might collapse. Sam had called face on Liam's toss. You, little morsel, step forward, Kale purred, a truly sickening sound. Sam whimpered, tears streaming down his face. No, please, I don't want to play. Oh, but the game has already begun, Kale said, its voice losing its mock playfulness, turning hard as granite. It took a step toward Sam, its claws clicking on the stone path. Ava, Sam's girlfriend, screamed, trying to pull him back, but an invisible force seemed to hold him rooted to the spot. Kale stood before Sam, towering over him. It held out its large, glowing coin. Call it, little one. Face or swirl.
Sam was catatonic with fear, unable to speak. "Call it," Cale roared, its voice like a rock slide, shaking the very ground. "Swirl," Sam finally choked out, his voice barely a whisper. Cale's lipless mouth stretched into that horrifying grin. It tossed its massive coin high into the air. The green glow intensified, casting grotesque, dancing shadows. He watched, mesmerized with terror, as it spun, arced, and then fell, landing with a heavy, decisive clang on a flat tombstone. It was face side up. Sam had lost. "A pity," Cale rasped, its burning eyes fixed on Sam. "The feast begins." It moved with blinding speed. One moment, Sam was standing there, paralyzed with fear. The next, Cale's clawed hand lashed out. There was a sickening, wet, tearing sound, and Sam screamed, a short, high-pitched shriek of unimaginable agony, cut off abruptly.
Kyle held up Sam's severed arm, blood dripping from the ragged stump, its needle teeth already tearing into the flesh. Ava let out a wail of pure, soul-shattering grief and horror. Several others retched or screamed or simply stared, their minds unable to process the atrocity they were witnessing. Kyle consumed the limb with horrifying, bestial relish, its burning eyes never leaving us, as if daring us to look away. When it was done, it tossed the gnawed bone aside. "One limb for one loss," Kyle announced, its voice thick. "The game is merciful in its own way. You have chances." It then turned its attention back to the trembling, broken form of Sam, who was somehow still alive, clutching the bleeding stump of his shoulder, his face a mask of shock and agony. "But the round is not yet over for you, little morsel," Kyle purred. "We play until the debt is fully paid." It held up its coin again. "Call." I don't know how Sam did it. Maybe it was shock, maybe some last desperate flicker of defiance. He managed to gasp, "Face!" Another toss, another horrifying spin, another clang. Swirl. Sam had lost again. Kyle cackled, a dry, rasping sound, and its other clawed hand shot out. Another sickening tear, another choked scream from Sam, this one weaker, gurgling. His other arm was gone. This was torture beyond comprehension, a slow, agonizing execution disguised as a game. Kyle devoured the second limb, its hunger seemingly insatiable. Sam lay on the ground, a mutilated, bleeding wreck, barely conscious, his life ebbing away with each ragged breath. "Two down," Kyle stated, wiping its bloody mouth with the back of its clawed hand. "Two to go, unless your luck changes." It was clear Sam wouldn't survive another loss. He was already fading. But Kyle showed no mercy. It held up the coin. Call it a little piece of meat. Sam didn't respond. His eyes were glazed. Ava, hysterical with grief, screamed at Kyle. "Leave him alone, you monster! Kill him if you must, but stop this torture!" Kyle turned its burning gaze on Ava. "The rules are the rules. The game must be played to its conclusion." It nudged Sam's unresponsive form with its clawed foot. He must call. Then Noah, ever the pragmatist, even in the face of such horror, spoke, his voice shaking but surprisingly steady. "He can't call. He's unconscious or dead. The rules of any game imply a conscious participant."
Kyle considered this for a moment, its grotesque head tilting. A point. Very well. It gestured to Sam's mutilated body. This one's game is forfeit. The debt remains. Its eyes swept over the rest of us who had lost the initial coin toss. There were about 5 of us left in that unfortunate group, including me and Ben. A new game begins for one of your limbs. Who wishes to volunteer, or shall I choose? No one spoke. The silence was thick with dread. Kyle's eyes settled on Ben, my best friend. You with the defiant eyes. You shall play. Ben, to his credit, met Kyle's gaze, though I could see the terror he was trying to suppress. All right, you ugly bastard, let's get this over with. Ben, no, I whispered. Bravado. It tastes delicious. It held up its coin. Call it. Face, Ben said firmly. The toss, the spin, the clang. Swirl. Ben had lost. My heart plummeted. Kale's grin widened. It moved towards Ben. Wait! I yelled, stepping forward, my mind racing. The coin! Your coin! Can I see it? Kale paused, its head tilting, an unreadable expression in its burning eyes. Curiosity. From one not yet in play? Interesting. It's just, if we're playing for our lives, shouldn't we understand the instrument of our fate? I bluffed, trying to sound braver than I felt. My eyes darted to the original, smaller coin, still clutched in Liam's hand. An idea, desperate and insane, was forming. Kale seemed to consider this. Very well. Observe. It held its massive coin closer. The green glow pulsed. The leering face seemed to shift, its expression suddenly changing. The spiral on the other side seemed to writhe, to draw the eye inwards. It was mesmerizing, hypnotic. It's not balanced, is it? I said, forcing my gaze away. It looks heavier on one side. That face, it's more raised, more detailed than the swirl. Kale let out a dry, rasping chuckle. Clever morsel. Indeed. My coin has its preferences. It favors despair, the face of fear. It calls to it. It's weighted, not physically perhaps, but supernaturally rigged. Then the game isn't fair, Chloe cried out, finding her voice. Fair, Kale boomed, its laughter echoing. Life is not fair, little ones. Death is even less so. The game is as it is. It turned back to Ben. Your limb is forfeit. But as Kale moved, I acted. I lunged for Liam, snatching the original, smaller coin from his stunned grasp. Hey! Liam yelped. If your coin has its preferences, then what about this one? The one that summoned you. Can we play with this? Kale froze, its burning eyes narrowed, focusing on the small coin in my hand. For the first time, something other than cruel amusement flickered in their depths. Was it uncertainty? Or even a sliver of fear? That coin, Kale rasped, its voice losing some of its booming confidence. That coin is an offering, a key. It is not for play by mortals with me. But you said the toss is made, the game is joined. This coin started it. If we play with this one and we win, do we get to change the stakes? Do we get to bargain? Kale was silent for a long moment, its gaze fixed on the small coin. The wall of shadows around us seemed to flicker, to waver slightly. Bargain, it finally said, a new dangerous note in its voice. What bargain could mortals like you offer me? Our silence, Noah interjected, stepping forward, his earlier terror replaced by a desperate intellectual cunning. If we survive, we tell no one. Your game, your existence remains a secret. You can continue to collect from others who are foolish enough to stumble upon your invitations. But if you wipe us all out, word gets out. Panic. People will search. They might even find a way to interfere. It was a wild gamble, relying on the idea that even a creature like Kale might value its anonymity, its ability to continue its gruesome games undisturbed. Kale let out a long, slow, hissing sound like air escaping from a punctured lung. You seek to negotiate the terms of your own slaughter. We seek to survive, Maya yelled, finding her courage. And this coin, she pointed to the one in my hand, feels different. It feels like it has power over you, not just us. Kale's burning eyes darted between the small coin and our defiant faces. The tension was unbearable. Finally, it spoke, its voice a low, dangerous growl. Very well. One toss with that relic you call, it gestured to me. If you win, I will consider your bargain. We will renegotiate. But if you lose... Its grin returned, wider, more horrifying than ever. If you lose, I take two of you swiftly. No more games with limbs, just an ending. And then I continue with the rest as planned. The stakes were impossibly high. My life and the life of one other wagered on a single toss of a cursed coin. But it was a chance. The only chance. I'll call, I said, my voice hoarse. My hand was shaking as I held up the small tarnished coin. It felt incredibly heavy. Leo, no, Sarah whispered. He has to, Ben said, his face grim, his own impending doom momentarily forgotten. I looked at the coin. Gleaming face, writhing swirl. It felt balanced, cold, but balanced. Not like Kale's monstrosity. I'm ready, I told Kale. Then toss, Kale commanded, its voice dripping with anticipation. I took a deep breath. This was it. For Ben, for Sarah, for Sam, for all of us. I flicked my thumb. The small, tarnished coin spun into the air, a tiny, tarnished glint in the oppressive darkness. Swirl! I called, my voice cracking. It was a gut feeling. The swirl felt older, more fundamental. The coin reached its apex, hung for an eternal second, and then began to fall. It landed in the grass at my feet with a soft, almost anticlimactic clink. Silence. Absolute, heart-stopping silence. Slowly, trembling, I bent down, my flashlight beam crowned it. Swirl side up. I had won. A sound ripped from Kale's throat, a strangled, furious snarl like a thwarted beast. The green light in its eyes flared violently, then dimmed, almost sputtering. The wall of shadows around us flickered erratically, thinning in places. You won? Kale rasped, its voice filled with disbelief, with a fury that was terrifying. Impossible! The odds! You said you'd consider our bargain. One toss. We won. Kale stared at the small coin, then at me, its expression a maelstrom of rage and something else. Something that looked almost like pain. Or perhaps the unraveling of a binding. The ancient pacts, it muttered, more to itself than to us. The old laws, they still hold sway. Even for me. It shrank just slightly, its form becoming less defined, more shadowy. Your bargain, it hissed, its voice weaker now. but still venomous. Speak it, quickly, before my displeasure consumes what little patience I have left. Let us go, I said, my voice shaking but firm. All of us who are still alive, you take no more, and we tell no one about you, about this night. Your game remains your secret. Kale stared at us, its burning eyes sweeping over our terrified, battered group. Ben, still awaiting his mutilation. Sarah is traumatized but alive. The twins, Emily and Ethan, clinging to each other. Chloe and Noah are pale but resolute. Liam and Maya held each other tightly. Ava, grieving for Sam, but still standing. Daniel and Freya were wide-eyed and silent. And me. 11 survivors. 4 lost. Finally, Hale nodded in a slow, jerky movement. Agreed. The word was like a shard of ice. You leave, now, and you speak of nothing. It gestured with a clawed hand, and the wall of shadows around us dissolved, melting back into the ordinary darkness of the cemetery. But know this, mortals, the game is never truly over. Other coins, other games await, and I will be waiting. With a final lingering glare that promised future torments, Kale began to recede, its form becoming more translucent, its edges blurring, until it seemed to melt back into the fissure from which it had emerged. The ground trembled one last time, the chasm sealed itself as if it had never been, and the foul stench began to dissipate. The green glow faded. Kale was gone. The small, tarnished coin in my hand felt warm now, almost comforting. We didn't waste a second. We grabbed Ben, helped Sarah, and we ran. We ran from that accursed cemetery, from the graves of our friends, from the lingering horror of Kale's game. We didn't stop running until the familiar, mundane lights of our town were in sight. The aftermath was a blur of police interrogations, bewildered parents, and grief too profound for words. 4 teenagers died. Sam is horrifically mutilated. Jake, Olivia, and Freya, who, in the chaos of Kale's initial appearance and the focus on Sam, had been silently, swiftly claimed by the shadows when she tried to flee. Simply vanished. The official story was a drug-fueled misadventure, a tragic accident. No one believed our fragmented, terrified ramblings about a coin, a creature, and a deadly game of heads or tails. They couldn't. Who would? We, the 11 survivors, carry the scars. Ben never fully recovered the use of the arm Kale had been about to take. It's perpetually cold, prone to phantom pains. Sarah rarely speaks. Ava is a ghost of her former self. We share a bond, a terrible secret. We know the truth. We know that some games are not meant to be played. The small coin, I still have it. It's my burden, my reminder. Sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet, I swear I can feel it pulse faintly in my hand, and I hear a whisper on the edge of hearing, a guttural voice saying, "The game awaits." Kale is out there, and it remembers. It remembers the bargain, but it also remembers the taste of fear, the thrill of the hunt, and it's patient. So very patient. Summer of '99. It shimmers in my memory like a heat haze, a golden, idyllic dream that curdled into a wakened nightmare. We were 20 souls, young and gloriously, catastrophically naive,
drunk on freedom and the endless possibilities of a summer stretching before us. Greenwood Forest was supposed to be our escape, our haven. Instead, it became our hunting ground, all because of a game. A stupid, innocent game that woke something up, something ancient, something hungry, something that had been waiting in the deep, dark heart of those woods for a long, long time. There were 20 of us, a sprawling, boisterous collective, a tapestry woven from various high school cliques, all united by the shared desire for one last epic summer adventure before college scattered us to the winds. Liam, our de facto leader, all charm and reckless confidence. His girlfriend Maya, the pragmatic one, usually the voice of reason. Ben, my best friend, quick with a laugh, loyal to a fault. Chloe is quiet and observant with an artist's soul. Noah, the nature enthusiast, knew every bird call and edible plant, or so he thought. Sarah, the storyteller, always spinning yarns, some of which, in hindsight, felt chillingly prophetic. Then there were Jake and Olivia, the inseparable couple, radiating that new love glow. Emily and Ethan, the adventurous twins. Sam, the cautious one who always worried too much. This time, his worry would be tragically insufficient. His girlfriend Ava is free-spirited and a little wild. Mark, the jock, all muscle and bravado. Jess, who documented everything on her bulky camcorder. Chris, the musician, is never without his guitar. A few others filled out our ranks. Tom, Will, Sophie, Freya, Paul, and Ryan, each a vibrant thread in the doomed tapestry of that summer. And me, Daniel. I was the skeptic, the one who rolled his eyes at ghost stories, the one who believed there was a rational explanation for everything. Greenwood Forest shattered that belief into a million jagged pieces. We'd rented a cluster of rustic cabins, nestled deep within Greenwood, miles from the nearest town, surrounded by an ocean of ancient whispering pines and impenetrable undergrowth. The first few days were idyllic, swimming in the icy creek, hiking trails that seemed to lead nowhere and everywhere, late-night bonfires under a canopy of stars so brilliant they felt close enough to touch. We felt utterly, blissfully alone with nature. We had no idea that nature was truly alone with us. The game. It was Chris's idea on our fourth night. We were gathered around a crackling bonfire, the air thick with the scent of pine smoke and cheap beer, the woods pressed in around us, a wall of impenetrable blackness beyond the firelight's reach. The usual spooky stories had been told, the marshmallows roasted, and a comfortable lull had settled. "Hey," Chris said, strumming a soft chord on his guitar. "I've got a new game. It's called Name That Sound. Simple enough. One person would make a sound, an animal cry, an object, whatever, and the others would guess. Harmless fun, or so it seemed. We played a few rounds. Ben did a surprisingly accurate impression of a screech owl. Sarah mimicked the crackling of the fire. Liam made us sound like a distant wolf howl, which sent a few nervous shivers through the group, despite our laughter. Then it was Jess's turn. She put down her camcorder, a mischievous glint in her eye. She cupped her hands around her mouth and let out a sound that was unsettling. A high-pitched, drawn-out wail, almost like a woman screaming in distress, but with an odd warbling quality to it. "Okay, what was that?" Jake asked, laughing nervously. "Sounds like a banshee," Olivia joked. We threw out a few more guesses. A loon, a fox, someone stepping on a Lego. Jess just grinned. "Nope, keep trying." Suddenly, from the deep, impenetrable darkness beyond our firelight, a voice answered. It wasn't human, not exactly. It was deep, guttural, resonant like the rumbling of stones deep within the earth. Yet it formed words, clear, chilling words that seemed to vibrate in the very air around us. I hear screaming. A sudden sharp silence around the bonfire. The insect sound stopped abruptly. The only sound was the crackling fire and that now very distinct, slow, rhythmic thump, thump, thump of the distant heartbeat. Every head whipped towards the darkness. Every smile froze. The playful atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a sudden, prickling dread. Who said that? Liam called out, his voice tight, trying to sound authoritative. No response. Just the oppressive silence of the woods, and that now undeniable rhythmic thumping, like something massive, something impossibly large was drawing nearer. Probably just some other campers messing with us, Mark the jock scoffed, though his eyes darted nervously into the blackness. There are no other campers for miles, Noah, our nature expert, said, his voice barely a whisper. The ranger said we were the only ones booked in this section of the forest all week. It was probably an echo, Sarah suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. Jess's scream, it just sounded like words. But we all knew, we all felt it. That voice hadn't been an echo, it had been a response, cold, deliberate, and utterly alien. Then the voice came again, closer this time, seeming to emanate from multiple directions at once, as if the forest itself was speaking. We answered. A collective gasp. This was no prank. What do you mean, we? There's nobody screaming out here. A beat of silence. The thumping grew louder, closer. A branch snapped in the darkness, a sound like a gunshot. Then that terrible, guttural voice, now laced with a hideous, ancient amusement. Soon you will be. And then it emerged. It didn't step out of the woods. It unfolded from them, as if it were made of the shadows, the twisted branches, the damp earth itself. It was colossal, easily 15 feet tall, its form vaguely humanoid, but grotesquely distorted. Its skin, if you could call it that, was like gnarled, ancient bark, matted with clumps of moss and dark, wet leaves. Its limbs were too long, thick as tree trunks, ending in jagged, splintered protrusions that looked like broken branches or talons made of petrified wood. But its head was the stuff of primordial nightmares. It was vaguely deer-like, but hideously wrong. Antlers, thick and black as charred bone, branched out in a chaotic, asymmetrical crown. Its face was elongated, its snout split by a vertical, lipless gash that opened to reveal rows of flat, grinding teeth like millstones. And its eyes were huge, black, pupilless orbs, reflecting the firelight with a dead, ancient intelligence. They seemed to hold the wisdom of millennia and an equally ancient, insatiable hunger. It took a step forward, the ground trembling beneath its immense weight. The thumping we'd been hearing, it was its heartbeat, or perhaps its footsteps. Panic, absolute, mindless, primal panic. Screams ripped through the night air. Our screams now. We scattered, a terrified, exploding constellation of bodies, abandoning the fire, the cabins, everything, driven by the singular, overwhelming instinct to flee. The creature, the forest heart, as a terrified, babbling Noah would later name it, before he too was taken, let out another of those ground-shaking roars, a sound that seemed to vibrate in our very bones. And then it began to move. Not quickly, not at first. It moved with a slow, deliberate, terrifying inevitability, like a force of nature, a glacier,
an earthquake. We ran blindly into the black, unforgiving woods. The creature's monstrous silhouette, a terrifying afterimage, burned into our retinas. The forest, which had been our playground, now became a deadly claustrophobic labyrinth. Branches clawed at us, roots tripped us. Every shadow seemed to writhe with unseen menace. We were separated almost immediately, our panicked shouts and screams swallowed by the dense trees. "Liam! Maya! Where are you?" I yelled, thrashing through the undergrowth, Ben stumbling beside me. "Over here!" A faint cry from somewhere to our left. Then a scream, high-pitched, cut short. Sophie, one of the quieter girls. It was followed by a sickening, crunching sound, like massive trees being snapped in two, and then that guttural, triumphant roar from the forest heart. One gone. The game, it seemed, had truly begun, and we were the ones screaming now. The forest heart was hunting us, systematically. Its senses, whatever they were, seemed preternaturally sharp. It could hear our panicked breathing, smell our fear. It moved through the dense woods with an unnatural ease, despite its size, as if the trees themselves parted to allow its passage. We found Chris, the musician, or what was left of him. He was impaled on a jagged, low-hanging branch, his guitar smashed beside him, his eyes wide with a silent, eternal scream. The ground around him was churned up, as if something immense had simply stepped on him. 2. Jess, the camcorder still clutched in her hand, was next. We heard her terrified shrieks, then the sound of her camera hitting the forest floor, followed by a wet, tearing sound. Her last recording, later recovered, showed a fleeting, blurry image of a massive bark-like hand, then darkness. 3. The night became a blur of terror, of running, of hiding, of listening to the screams of our friends being extinguished one by one. The forest heart seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Its guttural roars, its ground-shaking footsteps, its ancient, terrifying breathing, they were the soundtrack to our desperate flight.
We saw it again, briefly, in a moonlit clearing. It had Ethan, one of the twins, in one of its massive branch-like hands. Ethan was struggling, screaming, but he was like a doll in its grasp. The forest heart simply squeezed. There was a horrifying, wet, cracking sound, and Ethan went limp. It then tossed his broken form aside with casual indifference. Emily, his twin, who had been hiding nearby, let out a wail of such profound grief and terror that it chilled me to the bone. The forest heart turned its black pupilless eyes towards her. She didn't even try to run. 4 and 5. The creature wasn't just killing us, it was savoring it. The fear, the chase. It was a game to it, a game it had perhaps played many times before, over centuries, with anyone foolish enough to disturb its slumber, to call out into its domain. Liam and Maya, trying to lead a small group, Jake, Olivia, and Paul, towards the main road, ran straight into it. We heard Liam's defiant shouts, Maya's screams, and then the sickening sounds of the creatures feasting. The roars were louder then, more satisfied. 5 more souls were claimed by the woods. 10. Half of us were gone in what felt like an eternity, but was probably less than an hour. The remaining 10 of us, me, Ben, Chloe, Noah, Sarah, Sam, Ava, Mark, Tom, and Will. Freya and Ryan had vanished early on, their fates unknown but easily guessed. Found ourselves, by some miracle, or perhaps by the creature's design,
stumbling towards the cluster of cabins we had so joyfully inhabited just hours before. "The cars," Ben gasped, his face pale and streaked with dirt and tears. "If we can get to the cars." It was a slim hope. The cabins were at least a quarter mile from where we'd parked, and the forest heart was still out there, its roars echoing through the trees, seeming to draw closer. But it was our only hope. We burst into the largest cabin, the one with the main common room, slamming the flimsy door shut, barricading it with a table, a sofa, anything we could find. Our breath came in ragged gasps, our bodies ached, our minds reeled from the horror. "We need a plan," Noah said, his voice shaking, his usual scientific detachment shattered. It's a genius loci, a spirit of the place, ancient, territorial. We woke it up. We insulted it with that mimicking game." "Insulted it?" Mark the jock snarled, his bravado long gone, replaced by a raw, animalistic fear. "It's eating us, you idiot." "What do we do?" Ava sobbed, clutching Sam, who was staring blankly at the wall, muttering to himself. "The fire," Sarah said suddenly, her eyes wide. "Creatures of the old world. They fear fire, don't they?" We had lighters and matches. There was a stone fireplace and some firewood. It was a desperate idea. As if on cue, the cabin began to tremble. A low, guttural growl rumbled from just outside the door. The rhythmic thumping of its heart, or its steps, was right there. It was testing the barricade. Another thud, stronger this time. The door groaned, splintering. "Quickly!" I yelled, fumbling with matches, trying to light the kindling Ben and Tom were frantically piling into the hearth. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the first match. The creature outside roared, a sound of pure elemental fury. It slammed against the door again, and this time the wood shattered, the barricade collapsing inwards. Framed in the doorway, its monstrous silhouette filling the space, stood the forest heart, its black eyes fixed on us, its lipless gash of a mouth parting slightly, revealing those terrible grinding teeth. The earthy, rotten smell of it filled the cabin, acrid and suffocating. It took a slow, deliberate step inside. Just as it entered, the fire in the hearth caught with a sudden whoosh, a desperate, defiant bloom of orange and yellow. The forest heart paused, its massive head tilted, its black eyes narrowed or seemed to reflect the flames. For the first time, something other than hunger and ancient malice flickered in their depths. Was it surprise, caution, or even a flicker of remembered pain? It let out a low, uncertain growl, taking a hesitant step back from the dancing flames. "It's working," Chloe whispered, a fragile tendril of hope in her voice. Mark, emboldened, grabbed a burning log from the fire with a pair of tongs. "Get back, you bastard!" he yelled, waving the flaming brand at the creature. The forest heart recoiled further, a strange, hissing sound escaping its maw. It seemed genuinely afraid of the fire. But it was also intelligent, cunning. It didn't retreat back into the woods. Instead, it began to circle the cabin, its immense weight shaking the floorboards, its guttural breathing a constant, terrifying presence just beyond the thin wooden walls. We could hear its claws, or branch-like talons, scraping against the exterior. It was looking for another way in, a window, a weakness. It's trying to trap us in here with the fire, Noah realized, his face grim. The standoff lasted for what felt like an eternity. We huddled around the fire, feeding it anything flammable we could find. Spare clothes, books, even pieces of the cabin's cheap furniture. The forest heart, a monstrous, patient sentinel, circling, testing, its guttural growls a constant reminder of its presence. Then, Sam, who had been catatonic, suddenly sprang to life.
He let out a wild, incoherent yell and charged for the broken doorway, straight towards the spot where the forest heart had last been seen. "Sam, no!" Ava screamed, lunging for him, but she was too late.
Sam disappeared into the darkness outside. We heard a brief, desperate struggle, a choked scream, and then that sickening, familiar crunch, followed by the creature's triumphant guttural roar. Closer now, as if it had been waiting just beyond the threshold. Ava collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. 11 friends are gone. 9 of us left, trapped in a flimsy wooden box with a dwindling fire and an ancient, patient monster outside. The fire was indeed dying. Our fuel was running out. The flames grew smaller, weaker. The forest heart seemed to sense it. Its growls grew louder, more confident. It began to batter at one of the boarded-up windows. "We're not going to make it," Tom whispered, his face buried in his hands. But Ben, my best friend, wasn't ready to give up. His eyes darted around the cabin, then fixed on the small, rusty hatch in the ceiling that led to the attic crawl space. "The roof. If we can get onto the roof, maybe we can make a break for it when it's focused on getting in here." It was insane. Suicidal, probably. But it was better than waiting to be cornered like rats. The window finally gave way with a crash. A massive, bark-like arm, ending in those splintered talons, reached into the cabin, flailing blindly, knocking over a lamp and a chair. "Now!" Ben yelled. He boosted Chloe, then Sarah up towards the attic hatch. I helped Ava, who was still dazed with grief. Noah scrambled up, then Tom and Will. Mark, surprisingly agile for his size, was next. I was the last one. As I pulled myself up into the dusty, stiflingly hot crawl space, I saw the forest heart's monstrous head and shoulders forcing their way through the shattered window frame below. Its black eyes scanned the room, then somehow fixed on the attic hatch. It knew. We crawled frantically across the rafters toward a small ventilation opening at the far end of the roof. It was a tight squeeze, but one by one we managed to wriggle out onto the sloping, moss-covered shingles. The night air was cold, a stark contrast to the stifling heat of the attic. The moon, a cold, indifferent eye, offered little comfort. And below us, the forest heart was already emerging from the cabin, its massive form unfolding once more into the night. It looked up, its black eyes finding us instantly. It let out a roar of frustrated fury, a sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the world. "Run!" Ben yelled. We scrambled, slid, and half fell down the other side of the roof, landing heavily on the soft, damp earth. We didn't look back. We just ran. Towards where we thought the cars were, towards any semblance of escape. The forest heart was after us, its ground-shaking pursuit a terrifying rhythm section to our panicked, ragged breaths. It was faster in the open, less encumbered by the trees it could now simply smash through. We could hear it gaining. Its guttural breathing was like a storm at our backs. Mark, who had been lacking slightly, let out a choked scream. We risked a glance back. The forest heart had him. One of its massive hands had closed around his torso. We saw him lifted into the air, struggling futilely. Then, a sickening, final crunch. 12. We didn't stop. We couldn't. Grief would have to wait. Survival was the only imperative. The parking area. We saw it, The blessed, beautiful glit of metal on metal. 2 cars, 1 van, our only hope. Keys. Who had the keys? Panic. Frantic pocket patting. Liam had the van keys. Liam was gone. Noah had his car keys. I had mine.
Noah, your car! Go! Ben yelled. Noah, Tom, and Will piled into Noah's small sedan. Chloe, Sarah, Ava, and I scrambled towards my slightly larger SUV. Ben was fumbling with the van's door, hoping against hope it was unlocked or that Liam had dropped the keys. The forest heart burst through the tree line, a terrifying 15-foot behemoth of wood and shadow and ancient rage, its black eyes fixed on us. It was less than 50 yards away. Noah's car roared to life. He slammed it into reverse, tires spinning on the gravel, and fishtailed out of the parking area, heading for the narrow dirt track that served as a road. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. Finally, the engine coughed, sputtered, then caught. "Ben, get in!" I screamed, leaning on the horn. Ben finally gave up on the van and sprinted towards us, the forest heart just yards behind him, its massive branch-like talons reaching. He threw himself into the passenger seat as I slammed the gear stick into drive and stomped on the accelerator. The SUV lurched forward, tires spinning gravel, just as one of the creature's massive arms smashed down where we'd been parked, splintering the abandoned van like kindling. We careened down the dirt track, bouncing, swerving, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. In the rearview mirror, I could see the forest heart, momentarily thwarted, roaring its frustration, its monstrous form silhouetted against the moonlit sky. It didn't pursue us down the road. Perhaps it couldn't, or wouldn't, leave the confines of its ancient domain. Or perhaps it knew it didn't have to. It had already taken so much. Noah's car was ahead of us. We followed its taillights like a beacon of hope in the oppressive darkness. We didn't speak. What was there to say? The horror was too fresh, too raw. The screams of our friends still echoed in our ears. We drove for what felt like an eternity, until the first faint, bruised light of dawn began to paint the eastern sky. We eventually hit a paved road, then a small, sleepy town. We looked like we'd crawled out of a nightmare, clothes torn, faces streaked with dirt and tears, eyes wide with a terror that would never truly leave us. 8 survivors out of 20. The official story, after weeks of police searches, bewildered news reports, and hushed local speculation, was a tragic accident. A group of reckless teenagers, a remote wilderness area, possible animal attacks, exposure, getting lost. They found pieces of clothing, Jess's damaged camcorder, a few scattered remains that the coroners attributed to bears or wolves. They never found 12 bodies. Greenwood Forest kept its secrets and its prizes well hidden. We, the survivors, tried to tell them about the game, about the voice, about the creature. They listened with pity, with skepticism. They offered counseling. They spoke of mass hysteria, trauma-induced delusion. But we know what we saw. We know what we heard. We know what hunted us. Greenwood Forest is still there. The locals whisper stories about it now, new legends woven from the fragmented truths and terrifying rumors of that summer. They say that sometimes, on still nights, if you listen closely, you can hear a faint, rhythmic thumping, like a giant heartbeat, deep within the woods. And sometimes, a guttural voice, carried on the wind, asking a simple, chilling question. Name that sound.
Summer of '96. It glows in my memory like a fading Polaroid. hazy, sun-drenched, and tainted by a darkness we were too young, too stupid to comprehend. We were 16 kids then, a sprawling, chaotic pack, invincible in our shared youth. Our kingdom was the abandoned Archer Pharmaceutical Building on 22nd Street, a concrete skeleton brooding at the edge of Oak Haven. Lisa was part of that kingdom until she wasn't. Until a game of cops and robbers went catastrophically wrong and the laughter died, replaced with a silence so profound it still echoes in the hollows of my soul 20 years later. There were 16 of us that sweltering July afternoon, a tangled web of friendships, rivalries, and teenage hormones. Billy, always the ringleader, brash and charismatic with a reckless streak a mile wide. His tight-knit crew of 7, Mark, David, Chris, Kevin, Paul, Ryan, and Steve, his loyal enforcers, always eager to follow his lead. Then there was Sarah, my closest friend, sharp-witted and fiercely independent. Mia, quiet and observant, who always seemed to know more than she let on. Tom, the joker, always trying to lighten the mood. His girlfriend Emily, sweet and easily flustered. Noah, the cautious one, who usually voiced the warnings we all ignored. And a few others, like me, Michael, who floated between the cliques, just happy to be part of the summer's wild, untamed energy. And then there was Lisa Miller. She was spirited, a little bit of a tomboy, always up for a challenge, with a laugh that could fill a room. She had a stubborn streak, a refusal to back down, especially when it came to Billy. The Archer building was our forbidden playground. 5 stories of decaying concrete, shattered windows like vacant eyes, and an echoing emptiness that amplified our shouts and laughter. Its centerpiece, and the source of countless dares and whispered ghost stories, was the old freight elevator shaft, a gaping black maw that plunged from the rooftop access point down into the flooded, rat-infested basement. There was no car, just the greasy cables and the sheer, terrifying drop. That day, Billy, in his infinite wisdom, decided we'd play cops and robbers, a building-wide manhunt. Lisa, never one to shy away from a challenge, and perhaps to spite Billy, who'd initially tried to exclude her from being a cop, insisted on being one of the chasers. The cops got a 5-minute head start to hide. Lisa, Sarah, and Noah were the cops. The rest of us were robbers, scattering into the dusty, labyrinthine corridors of Archer. I remember the thrill of the chase, the adrenaline, the echoing shouts. I remember ducking into a dilapidated office, heart hammering as Lisa's determined footsteps pounded past. She was good, relentless. Then came the scream. Not a playful shriek, a raw, terrified sound abruptly cut short, followed by a sickling, hollow thud that seemed to reverberate through the very bones of the building. The game stopped instantly. We emerged from our hiding places, a confused, anxious trickle of teenagers drawn by an unspoken dread towards the 5th floor, near the elevator shaft. Billy and his 7 buddies were already there, clustered near the gaping hole, their faces pale, their usual bravado gone. "What happened?" Sarah demanded, her voice shaking. "Where's Lisa?" Billy wouldn't meet our eyes. He just stared down into the blackness of the shaft. She fell," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. We were struggling near the edge. She was trying to arrest me. She just slipped." His friends mumbled in agreement. their eyes darting nervously, avoiding ours. Mark claimed he saw her lunge and lose her footing. David said it was an accident, pure and simple. A tragic, awful accident. Lisa, gone. Swallowed by the darkness. The police, the paramedics, the grim-faced adults. It was all a blur of sirens, hushed conversations, and a crushing weight of guilt and disbelief. They retrieved her body, broken and lifeless from the bottom of the shaft. Accidental death, the official report said. A tragic misadventure. Case closed. But some of us had doubts. Billy's story felt thin. The way his friends parroted his account was a little too rehearsed. The look in Billy's eyes when he thought no one was watching. Not grief. Not exactly. Something more like fear or relief. Lisa had been a thorn in Billy's side. She challenged him and stood up to him. Maybe it wasn't an accident. Maybe she was pushed. But we were kids, scared, confused, and the official story was easier to accept than the horrifying alternative. So we buried Lisa, and with her, we buried our doubts and our unspoken questions. We tried to forget. We moved on, or so we thought. 20 years. 2 decades can dull the sharpest edges of grief, can smooth over the roughest memories. We'd scattered, gone to college, started careers, families. Oak Haven and the Archer Building became a distant, uncomfortable memory. Until Sarah, ever the organizer, decided it was time for a reunion. A chance to reconnect, her email said, to remember the good times. She'd even, somewhat morbidly, or perhaps bravely, suggested we meet at a newly renovated event space near 22nd Street as a nod to our shared past. 15 of us agreed to come, all who were there that fateful day, except, of course, Lisa. And Kevin, one of Billy's crew, who had died in a car crash a few years back. So 14 of us, survivors of that summer, gathered on a crisp October evening, the ghosts of our younger selves hovering in the periphery. Billy was there, a little softer around the edges, but still with that same cocksure grin. His remaining 6 cronies, Mark, David, Chris, Paul, Ryan, and Steve, were by his side. Their loyalty, it seemed, undiminished by time. Sarah, Mia, Tom, Emily, Noah, and myself. We represented the others, the ones who hadn't been part of Billy's inner circle that day. The initial awkwardness gave way to forced smiles, stilted conversations, and the dredging up of old, carefully curated memories. The elephant in the room, Lisa, was studiously ignored. Until Tom, lubricated by a few too many glasses of wine, raised his glass. To, absent friends, he slurred, his gaze a little too pointed. To Lisa? A chill descended. Billy's smile tightened. His friend shifted uncomfortably. Suddenly, the lights in the event space flickered violently, then died, plunging us into darkness. Emergency lights stuttered on, casting long, eerie shadows. And then that sound, a sound none of us had heard in 20 years, a sound that sent an icy shiver of recognition down our spines. The groan and screech of an old industrial elevator, coming from somewhere close, too close. Panic rippled through the room. People fumbled for their phones, their flashlight apps casting weak, trembling beams. "What the hell was that?" Billy demanded, his voice unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. The main doors, heavy oak, were locked, bolted from the outside. The emergency exits and steel fire doors were the same, jammed, sealed. We were trapped. And then a voice. A girl's voice. Soft, echoing, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was a voice we all knew, a voice that had haunted our dreams for 2 decades. Ready or not, here I come. Lisa. It was impossible, insane, but that voice, it was undeniably hers, chillingly, playfully hers. "This isn't funny," Mark yelled, his voice cracking. "Whoever's doing this, stop it!" The only reply was a soft, childish giggle, echoing through the darkened event space. And then from the direction of what looked like an old service corridor we hadn't noticed before, came the distinct, rhythmic thump, thump, thump of someone or something approaching. A figure emerged from the shadows of the corridor, small, slender, dressed in faded denim shorts and a t-shirt, Lisa's favorite outfit from that summer. Her face was obscured by shadow, her hair, long and dark, hanging lank around her shoulders. But as she stepped into the dim glow of an emergency light, we saw her. It was Lisa, or what was left of her. Her skin was pale, translucent, tinged with a sickly grayish hue, like someone who had spent too long in the dark, damp earth. Her eyes were wide, luminous, and filled with an ancient, sorrowful rage, and she was holding something. A rusted, old-fashioned police badge, the kind kids play with. "The game started," she whispered, her voice a chilling echo of her younger self. "Cops and robbers, just like old times. Only this time, the cop always wins." She took a step forward, and the temperature in the room plummeted. A damp, earthy smell, like a freshly opened grave, filled the air. "Lisa," Sarah breathed, her face a mask of disbelief and terror. It can't be you." Lisa's spectral lips curved into a smile that was all wrong, too wide, too knowing, filled with an eternity of pain. "Oh, but it is, Sarah. I've been waiting a long, long time to play again." Her luminous eyes swept over us, lingering on Billy and his friends. Then she moved, not walking exactly, gliding, with an unnatural, terrifying speed. She darted towards Paul, one of Billy's crew, who was closest to the sealed doors, frantically rattling the handle. Paul screamed as Lisa's cold, spectral hand passed through his chest. He staggered back, clutching himself, a look of utter shock and agony on his face. He gasped, his breath turning to frost, and then collapsed, his body hitting the polished floor with a dull thud. His eyes were wide, staring, a thin trickle of dark, viscous liquid oozing from the corner of his mouth. Not blood, something else. Something that looked like dirty elevator grease. "One down."
Panic exploded. Screams echoed off the walls. We scattered, a terrified herd, seeking any escape, any hiding place in the suddenly hostile environment of the event space. Tables were overturned, chairs were thrown. Billy, his face a mask of primal terror, roared, "It's not her! It's a trick, a hologram, something!" But the icy cold, the suffocating dread, the sight of Paul's lifeless body, it was no trick. Lisa's chilling laughter echoed around us. "Run, robbers, run! But you can't hide from the cop forever." She glided towards Ryan, another of Billy's cronies, who was trying to pry open a window with a decorative letter opener. Ryan didn't even have time to scream. Lisa's hand, insubstantial, yet terrifyingly potent, phased through his back. He crumpled, the letter opener clattering uselessly. 2. We were trapped in a grotesque parody of our childhood game, but the stakes were no longer bragging rights. They were our lives, our souls. The elevator shaft, Noah suddenly yelled, his eyes wide with dawning horror. That sound, it wasn't just an elevator. It was the elevator from Archer. She's brought a piece of that place with her. He was right. The service corridor Lisa had emerged from, it hadn't been there before. As if the decaying, malevolent spirit of the Archer building itself had bled into this new space, brought here by Lisa's vengeful will. And that corridor, it led, impossibly, to a dark, gaping maw that looked sickeningly familiar. The top of an elevator shaft, the same shaft that had claimed Lisa's life. And now, it seemed Lisa was using it to claim ours. Chris, another of Billy's gang, made a desperate break for that corridor, perhaps thinking it was an escape route. Lisa intercepted him with terrifying speed. We heard a choked gasp, a wet, tearing sound, and then Chris's body was pulled, as if by an invisible force, into the darkness of the shaft. A moment later, a sickening, distant thud echoed up from its depths, just like 20 years ago. Her vengeance was systematic, brutal. She's targeting them, Mia hissed, huddled with us, the others, behind an overturned banquet table. Billy's crew first. She knows who was there, who might have lied. The remaining members of Billy's gang were in a blind panic, scrambling, trying to find an exit, any exit. Billy himself was backed into a corner, his face ashen, his bravado shattered. Lisa glided towards David, who was clawing uselessly at a bricked-up window. Her spectral form flickered, and for a horrifying moment, her face contorted, becoming something ancient and monstrous, her eyes burning with an infernal light. Then she was Lisa again, the sorrowful, vengeful child. You saw, didn't you, David? You saw him push me, and you said nothing.
David whimpered, shaking his head, tears streaming down his face. No, Lisa, it was an accident. Lisa's hand passed through him. He collapsed, his light extinguished. 4. Mark and Steve, seeing their numbers dwindle, their fate sealed, seemed to lose all reason. Mark charged at Lisa, roaring, swinging a heavy champagne bucket. It passed right through her, smashing against the wall. Lisa's chilling giggle was his only reply before she claimed him. 5. Steve, the last of the cronies, simply sank to his knees, sobbing, begging. I'm sorry, Lisa. I'm so sorry. We were scared. Billy made us. Lisa paused before him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, a flicker of something. Was it sadness? Pity? Then it was gone, replaced by that cold, unyielding resolve. Sorry isn't enough, Stevie, she whispered, and her hand reached out. 6. All of Billy's crew, except Kevin, who was already dead, were now gone, taken by Lisa's spectral justice. Now, it was just Billy. And us, the 8 survivors. Lisa turned her luminous, accusing eyes on Billy, who was cowering in the corner, a broken, terrified man. And then there was one. Lisa whispered, her voice dripping with a cold, bitter triumph. Your turn, Billy. The game always ends with the biggest robber of all. Billy scrambled to his feet, his eyes darting around wildly. It wasn't my fault. She fell. I told you. It was an accident. Liar, Lisa hissed, the word echoing with the force of a physical blow. You pushed me, Billy. You were angry I wouldn't back down. You wanted to shut me up. And your friends, they helped you lie. Her form flickered again, and for a horrifying instant, we saw not the child Lisa, but something else, something darker, woven from shadows and the decaying concrete of the Archer building, its eyes burning with the accumulated rage of 20 lost years. No! Billy screamed, covering his face. Please, Lisa, I didn't mean it, I swear. Too late for apologies, Billy. Lisa's voice was a cold wind. Now you get to see what it felt like. That long, long fall. The darkness. The fear. She reached for him, but then Sarah stepped forward, placing herself between Lisa and Billy. Lisa, stop! Sarah cried, her voice trembling but firm. This isn't you. The Lisa I knew. She wouldn't want this. She wouldn't want more death, more pain. Lisa paused, her spectral hand inches from Billy's terror-stricken face. Her luminous eyes focused on Sarah, a flicker of confusion, of sorrow in their depths. He took my life, Sarah, she whispered, her voice filled with an unbearable pain. They all stood by and let him. They forgot me. They let me rot in the darkness. We didn't forget you, Lisa, I said, finding my voice and stepping up beside Sarah. Some of us, we always wondered. We always felt the guilt. But this isn't justice. This is just more darkness. The others, Mia, Tom, Emily, Noah, slowly, hesitantly, joined us, forming a loose semicircle, a fragile barrier between Lisa's vengeance and Billy's cowering form. Lisa looked at us, her expression shifted, the burning rage momentarily softened by a sense of profound, heartbreaking sadness. The spectral form of the vengeful entity seemed to recede slightly, revealing more of the lost, hurt child beneath. But the game, she whispered, her voice small, almost lost. The game isn't over until the last robber is caught. Then let's change the game, Lisa, Noah said gently, his voice calm, despite the terror that still clung to the air. He was referring to the Archer building itself, its oppressive, malevolent spirit that seemed to have intertwined with Lisa's own. Lisa's form flickered violently. The lights in the room pulsed. The sound of the elevator grinding echoed louder, as if a battle was being waged within her, the vengeful spirit against the memory of the girl she once was. He has to pay! The voice was harsher now, less Lisa, more the entity. The temperature dropped again. Billy whimpered. And he will, Lisa, Sarah said, her voice pleading. But not like this. Let the living deal with the living. What he did, it will come out. We'll make sure of it. But you don't have to carry this hate anymore. You can be free. Free, the word seemed to hang in the air. Lisa looked at Billy, then back at us. Her luminous eyes, for the first time, seemed uncertain. The rage was still there, but it was now tinged with an unbearable weariness, a sorrow that spanned 20 years. The building around us groaned. The impossible elevator shaft in the service corridor seemed to pulse with a dark energy, as if the malevolent spirit of the place, the genius locus of Archer Pharmaceutical, was trying to reclaim its hold on her, to fuel her vengeance. It hurts, Lisa whispered, her hand, now almost translucent, going to her spectral chest. It always hurts. We know, Lisa, I said softly. Let it go. Let us carry it now. For a long, agonizing moment, she just stared at us, her form flickering between the vengeful phantom and the lost child. Then, slowly, achingly, the rage began to recede. The sorrow remained, but it was softer, less consuming. The figure of the vengeful entity, the one woven from shadows and decay, seemed to detach itself from her like a shed skin, and with a final mournful sigh, it dissipated, drawn back toward the gaping maw of the elevator shaft in the service corridor. Lisa, the girl, stood before us, pale, ethereal, her eyes filled with profound sadness, but the burning rage was gone. I don't want to play anymore, she whispered, her voice barely audible. The oppressive cold in the room began to lift. The sealed doors and windows rattled. Then, one by one, with a groan of protesting metal, they unlatched. Fresh, cool night air began to circulate. The impossible service corridor and the elevator shaft within it began to fade, to become translucent, like a bad dream receding with the dawn. Lisa looked at Billy one last time, not with hatred, but with a deep, weary pity. Then she turned to us. Don't forget me. Again, she whispered. And then she began to fade, her form becoming more and more transparent until she was just a shimmering outline, a lingering scent of damp earth and lost childhood. Then she was gone. We were left in the dim, flickering emergency lights, 8 survivors, trembling, grief-stricken, and utterly bewildered. Billy was a sobbing wreck in the corner. The bodies of his friends were gone, vanished, as if they had never been. Only the chilling memory and the faint, lingering smell of the grave remained. The authorities, when they finally arrived, alerted by someone who heard the commotion, found a group of traumatized adults, a locked-up event space with no signs of forced entry or exit, and no evidence of foul play, beyond our wild, incoherent stories. Billy, broken and terrified, confessed. He told them everything. How he pushed Lisa in a fit of rage, how his friends had helped him cover it up, how they'd lived with the lie for 20 years. He was arrested. Justice, of a mundane legal kind, would finally be served. But we knew the real story. We knew Lisa had come back, not just for revenge, but perhaps for release, for us to finally acknowledge the truth, to remember her not just as a victim, but as the friend we had failed. The Archer Building still stands on 22nd Street, a decaying monument to a summer of lost innocence. They say that sometimes on quiet nights, if you listen closely, you can still hear the faint echo of children's laughter and the mournful sigh of an old, forgotten elevator.
They say water holds memories, that every ripple, every reflection carries echoes of what's been. I used to think that was poetic nonsense. Now I know it's true, because I've seen the memories Lake Valley holds. I've felt them. They are cold, and they are hungry, and they bear the name Sally. Our town, Havenwood Creek, prided itself on its quaint charm and its postcard-perfect Main Street. But like all picturesque places, it had its shadows, its dark corners. And the darkest of them all was Lake Valley Forest, and nestled within its ancient, gnarled heart, the lake itself. A shimmering, deceptively beautiful expanse of water known to the locals only as Sally's Tears. The warnings were woven into the fabric of our childhoods, as common as bedtime stories. Stay out of Lake Valley Forest, our parents would say, their voices tight with an uncharacteristic severity. And whatever you do, never go near that lake, especially not after dark. Sally doesn't like visitors. Sally. The name was a ghost on the town's tongue. The legend was as old as Havenwood Creek itself, dating back to the late 1800s. A young girl, innocent and sweet, falsely accused of witchcraft or some other perceived transgression. The details varied with the teller. The town whipped into a frenzy of fear and ignorance, had dragged her into the depths of Lake Valley Forest and drowned her in the cold, dark waters of the lake. They said her spirit, twisted by betrayal and rage, remained, forever bound to the place of her murder, forever seeking retribution. They said if you went into her lake, you wouldn't come back. Or if you did, you wouldn't be you anymore. 10 of us, 10 bright, foolish flames, convinced we were fireproof. We were on the cusp of summer, that glorious, untamed stretch between high school graduation and whatever came next. The world felt like our oyster, and rules were merely suggestions, easily discarded. There was Liam, ever the instigator, charming and reckless. His girlfriend Maya, always more cautious, but easily swept up in Liam's enthusiasm. Ben, my best friend since we were kids, the group's joker, always ready with a quip to diffuse tension. His girlfriend, Chloe, is kind-hearted and easily spooked, but fiercely loyal. Then there was Noah, the quiet intellectual, obsessed with local history and folklore. Sally's story was his particular fixation. Sarah, the artist, always sketching, drawn to the melancholic beauty of the woods. Jake, the jock, all bravado and competitive spirit. His girlfriend, Olivia, is sharp and pragmatic. And finally, twins, Emily and Ethan, are inseparable, always up for an adventure, no matter how ill-advised. And me, Mark. I was the skeptic, the one who rolled his eyes at ghost stories, the one who thought he knew better. I was so wrong. The plan was hatched on a sweltering June night, fueled by cheap beer and the intoxicating thrill of impending freedom. A final hurrah before we all scattered, Liam had declared. A midnight swim in Sally's Tears. A chill, despite the heat, ran through the group. "Are you insane?" Maya had said, but her eyes held a flicker of dangerous excitement. "You know what they say about that lake." "Exactly," Liam grinned. "It's a legend. Think of the bragging rights. We swam in Sally's lake and lived to tell the tale." "My grandma says people have disappeared there," Chloe whispered, her voice trembling. "She said you can hear Sally crying on still nights." Ben nudged her playfully. "Probably just the loons, Chloe, or maybe Sally just needs a good swimming buddy." His joke fell flat. Even Noah, the resident expert on Sally, looked uneasy. "The accounts are consistent," he said slowly. "Violent storms often accompany disturbances at the lake, and the victims, they're often found with water in their lungs, even if they're miles from the shore." The logical part of me,
The part that still harbored a sliver of respect for generations of warnings, knew this was a profoundly stupid idea. But the part of me that was 18, high on summer and defiance, and eager to prove the town's fears unfounded, was louder. Besides, I wanted to impress Sarah. She had a fascination with the forbidden, and I figured a little bravery wouldn't hurt. So, armed with flashlights, a couple of six-packs, and a dangerous surplus of teenage hubris, we found ourselves pushing through the tangled undergrowth at the edge of Lake Valley Forest just as the moon, a pale, watchful eye, climbed into the inky sky. The forest itself was a place of deep, unsettling shadows. Ancient trees, their branches like skeletal fingers, clawed at the sky. The air was heavy, damp, and carried the scent of pine needles, decaying leaves, and something else, a faint, almost imperceptible smell of stagnant water and something vaguely metallic, like old rust or dried blood.
The path to the lake was overgrown, barely visible. As we drew closer, the temperature seemed to drop several degrees. The usual night sounds of the forest, the crickets, the frogs, faded into an unnerving silence. All we could hear was the soft, rhythmic lapping of water against a shore we couldn't yet see. And then, through a break in the trees, we saw it. Sally's tears. It was beautiful, in a chilling, ethereal way. The moonlight shimmered on its dark, glassy surface, making it look like a sheet of polished obsidian. Mist clung to its edges, swirling like spectral dancers. The stillness was absolute, the silence profound, broken only by that incessant, gentle lapping. "Wow," Sarah breathed, her sketchbook already in hand. "It's haunting." "Hauntingly awesome, you mean?" Liam said, stripping off his shirt. "Last one ends of rotten egg." He charged towards the water's edge. Maya, after a moment's hesitation, followed, laughing. Jake and Olivia were right behind them. "Guys, wait," Noah called out, his voice tight. "Maybe we should, I don't know, show some respect. The legend says she doesn't like being disturbed." "Oh, relax, Noah," Jake yelled back, already knee-deep. "She's probably lonely. We're just here to keep her company." A sudden gust of wind, cold and smelling of deep, undisturbed water, swept across the lake, ruffling its surface and extinguishing a couple of our weaker flashlights. The mist on the water seemed to thicken, to coalesce. "Did you feel that?" Chloe whispered, clutching Ben's arm. "Just the wind, babe," Ben said, though he looked a little spooked himself. Liam, Maya, Jake, and Olivia were already splashing and laughing in the shallows. The water, even from the shore, looked impossibly dark, black as ink. Ethan and Emily, with whoops of excitement, ran in to join them. That left me, Ben, Chloe, Noah, and Sarah on the shore. "Come on, Mark, Sarah," Ben called. "Water's surprisingly warm." I looked at Sarah. She was staring at the lake, her expression a mixture of fascination and unease. "It's beautiful, but it feels old and sad." "Let's just dip our toes in," I suggested, trying to sound casual. "Prove the ghosts wrong." We waded in tentatively. The lake bottom was soft, silty, and disturbingly yielding underfoot. The water was indeed surprisingly warm, almost unnaturally so, like bath water that had been sitting for too long. As my ankles submerged, I felt a strange sensation, a faint tingling, almost like a static charge. And the silence, it was pressing in, as if the lake itself was holding its breath. The others were further out now, their laughter and shouts echoing strangely across the still water. Liam was trying to dunk Maya. Jake was attempting a handstand. Then, Olivia shrieked. Not a playful shriek, a sharp, terrified sound.
What was that? Ben yelled, spinning around. Olivia was flailing, her arms windmilling. Something grabbed my leg, she choked out, her face pale with terror in the moonlight. Jake, who was closest, swam to her. What are you talking about? There's nothing here. He swept his hands through the water around her legs. Olivia was shaking, hyperventilating. I felt it. It was cold and strong. Probably just a snag or a big fish, Liam said dismissively, though his laughter had died. The mood had shifted. The playful atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a prickling unease. Maybe we should get out, Chloe said, her voice barely a whisper, already backing towards the shore. Suddenly, the lake's surface, previously so calm, began to ripple, not from the wind. The air was still dead, but from beneath, as if something large was moving just under the surface. The ripples spread outwards, towards us, and then the humming started. Faint at first, almost imperceptible, like the thrum of a distant generator, but it grew, a low, resonant frequency that vibrated through the water, through the ground, into our bones. It was accompanied by that childlike hum I'd heard on the wind earlier, clearer now, achingly sad, yet deeply unsettling. What is that? Ethan yelled, his voice tight with alarm. The water around Jake and Olivia began to churn, not violently, but with a slow, powerful roiling, as if the lake bed itself was shifting. Jake cried out, a strangled sound. He thrashed, his eyes wide with panic. It's got me! Something's got my legs! He was pulled under. One moment he was there, the next just a swirl of disturbed water and a fading series of bubbles. Olivia screamed, a raw, primal sound of terror. She tried to swim away, but she too was dragged down, silently, swiftly, without a struggle, as if an invisible hand had simply plucked her from the surface. Panic. Pure, unadulterated panic erupted. Liam and Maya, closest to the shore, scrambled out, gasping, their faces masks of horror. Ethan and Emily, further out, were screaming, trying to swim back, but they seemed to be making no progress, as if caught in an unseen current. Help us! Emily screamed, her voice cracking. We can't move! Ben and I, knee-deep, were frozen for a horrifying second. Then the adrenaline kicked in. We have to help them, Ben yelled, starting to wade deeper. No! Noah screamed from the shore, his face ashen in horror. It's her! It's Sally! As if summoned by her name, the mist on the lake thickened dramatically, swirling and coalescing in the center, right where Ethan and Emily were struggling. And within the mist, a shape began to form. Small, childlike, pale, with long dark hair that seemed to float around its head, even though there was no breeze. Its eyes were just dark, empty sockets. Yet they seemed to fix on Ethan and Emily with an ancient, sorrowful hunger. It was Sally. She raised a pale, slender hand. The water around Ethan and Emily erupted, dragging them under with a terrifying, silent efficiency. One moment they were there, screaming. The next, gone. Just the swirling mist and the endless lapping water. 4 of them, gone in less than a minute. The rest of us on the shore, me, Ben, Chloe, Liam, Maya, Noah, and Sarah, stared in numb horror. Then Liam broke. We have to get out of here, he screamed, grabbing Maya's arm and pulling her towards the trees. We didn't need to be told twice. We turned and fled, stumbling over roots and branches, whipping our faces. The image of that pale, sorrowful figure in the mist seared into our minds. The humming followed us, a relentless, mournful drone, and the whispers, faint, childlike whispers that seemed to slither through the trees. "Don't go. Play with me. Stay and play." Chloe tripped and fell, crying out. Ben, despite his own terror, turned back for her, hauling her to her feet. As we neared the edge of the forest, the path we had taken seemed different. The trees looked denser, more menacing, the shadows deeper. Then Sarah screamed. She was just ahead of me. She stopped dead, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes fixed on something in the path. Lying there, as if carefully placed, was one of Jake's sneakers, soaked, and beside it, a single long strand of Olivia's red hair, tangled around a waterlogged twig. Sally was toying with us, leaving us tokens, reminders. She's hurting us," Noah choked out, his face slick with sweat and terror. "She doesn't want us to leave the forest." The air grew colder still. A damp, earthy smell, stronger now, filled our nostrils, and the lapping sound of water, it seemed closer. Impossible, but closer, as if the lake itself was expanding, creeping through the trees behind us. We ran harder. Desperation fueled our flight. We could hear something moving in the undergrowth, paralleling our path. Not footsteps, more like a slithering, dragging sound, and the soft, wet patter of small, bare feet. Liam, who was in the lead with Maya, suddenly skidded to a halt. "The path! It's gone!" We had crowded behind him. He was right. The faint trail we'd been following had simply vanished, replaced by an impenetrable wall of thorny bushes and gnarled trees. We were trapped. "This way!" Ben yelled, pointing to a narrow gap between two ancient oaks. "Maybe we can push through." We plunged into the dense woods, thorns tearing at our clothes and skin. The whispers were closer now, swirling around us, sometimes sounding like one child, sometimes like a chorus of lost voices. "So cold, always so cold, warm me. They hurt me, they all hurt me. Now you'll know." Maya stumbled, crying out as her ankle twisted. Liam tried to help her, but she was sobbing, unable to put weight on it. "Leave me, just go." "Never," Liam gritted out, trying to half-carry, half-drag her. Then, from the darkness directly in front of them, a figure materialized. Sally, her dark, empty eyes fixed on Maya. Her pale lips curved into a semblance of a smile, but it was all sorrow, all pain. She reached out a hand, not quickly, but with a slow, inevitable grace. Her fingers, long and pale, brushed Maya's cheek. Maya went rigid. Her eyes glazed over. A thin trickle of water, dark and silty, oozed from the corner of her mouth. She slumped in Liam's arms, her breath a shallow, rattling sigh. Then still. Liam stared, his face a rictus of horror and disbelief. He looked up at Sally, his expression transforming into one of pure, unadulterated rage. "You bitch!" he roared, lunging at the spectral figure. He passed right through her. Sally simply turned her empty gaze on him. The smile, if it could be called that, widened slightly. Liam clutched his chest, a look of sudden, agonizing surprise on his face. He gasped, doubling over, water, lake water, pouring from his mouth and nose. He collapsed at Sally's feet, convulsing before lying still. Six gone! Me, Ben, Chloe, Noah, and Sarah. That's all that was left. We didn't even scream. We were beyond that. A numb, cold terror had enveloped us. The old trapper's cabin? Noah stammered, his eyes darting wildly. It's supposed to be deeper in the woods near the ridge. Maybe she can't reach us there. Higher ground. It was a desperate, flimsy hope, but it was all we had. We plunged deeper into the oppressive darkness, Noah leading the way, relying on half-forgotten tales and a desperate sense of direction. The whispers and the dragging sounds pursued us, sometimes close, sometimes falling back, as if Sally was enjoying the chase, savoring our fear. We found the cabin. It was dilapidated, barely standing and half consumed by moss and ivy. The door hung crookedly on one hinge, but it was shelter. 4 walls. We stumbled inside, barricading the flimsy table with a rotten table. Chloe collapsed in a corner, sobbing uncontrollably. Ben tried to comfort her, his own face pale and drawn. Sarah was sketching frantically in her pad, her hands shaking, drawing grotesque, waterlogged figures with empty eyes. Noah paced, muttering verses from old-town records, searching for some clue, some defense. The temperature inside the cabin plummeted. Our breath plumed in the air. The damp, earthy smell of the lake filled the small space. And then the tapping started. Light, delicate tapping. On the walls. On the roof. On the single, grimy window. Like small, wet fingers. "Let me in." The whisper came right outside the door, so close it felt like she was breathing on the wood. "I just want friends." "She's lying," Noah hissed, his eyes wide with terror. "She doesn't want friends. She wants company in the cold." The tapping on the window became more insistent. We could see a small, pale face pressed against the glass, features indistinct in the gloom, dark hair plastered to the pane. The empty sockets of its eyes stared in. Chloe screamed a high, thin sound that seemed to delight Sally. The face of the window tilted its head, its lipless mouth curving. The wood of the door began to creak and splinter.
"We have to do something," I yelled, grabbing an old, rusty iron poker I found near the dilapidated fireplace. It felt pitifully inadequate. Sarah suddenly gasped, looking at her sketchbook. "The water. She controls the water. The townspeople. They used fire against witches, didn't they?" "Fire?" Noah looked around frantically. "There's nothing here that will burn easily. Everything's damp." But Ben had an idea. "The beer. Some of it was higher-proof stuff Liam brought, and lighters." He fumbled in his pockets, producing a cheap plastic lighter. It was a desperate, insane plan, but what did we have to lose? The door buckled inwards with a sickening crack. Sally stood framed in the opening, her pale form seeming to radiate an icy cold. Water dripped from her hair and her tattered dress, pooling at her bare feet. She glided into the cabin, her empty eyes fixing on Chloe, who was cowering in the corner. "You look like one of them," she whispered, her voice laced with centuries of pain and rage. "The ones who laughed." As she moved towards Chloe, Ben acted. He doused a pile of old rags we'd found with the last of the beer, then flicked the lighter. It took several tries, his hand shaking, but finally a small, pitiful flame sprang to life. He threw the burning rags at Sally. The effect was instantaneous and horrifying. The flames caught on her damp dress, and she shrieked, a sound that wasn't just a scream of pain but of betrayal, of remembered agony. The spectral form flickered, distorting, the childlike features momentarily contorting into something ancient and monstrous. The smell of burning fabric mixed with the cloying scent of stagnant water. She recoiled, her form wavering like a heat haze. The icy cold in the cabin lessened slightly. "It's working!" Noah yelled. "Keep her back!" But the flames on the rags were already dying out, sputtering out against her unnatural dampness. Sally,
her form now flickering and unstable, her empty eyes burning with a new, furious light, turned towards Ben. Fire. They used fire, too. You will all burn in the cold. She lunged, not physically, but with a wave of icy, spectral energy. Ben cried out, clutching his chest, his face contorting in agony. He stumbled back, gasping, frost instantly forming on his clothes and his hair. He collapsed, his breath a rattling gasp, his eyes glazing over with a thin sheen of ice. Chloe screamed his name, a sound of utter devastation. Sarah dropped her sketchbook, her face a mask of frozen terror. Noah just stared, his hope extinguished. It was just us three now, and Sally, her form solidifying again, her rage palpable. She turned her attention to Chloe. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was rage. Maybe it was just the primal instinct to protect the last few sparks of life. I grabbed the iron poker and charged, roaring her name. Sally! I swung the poker. It passed right through her, a shock of icy cold jolting up my arm. But my shout, my defiance, seemed to give her pause. She turned her empty gaze on me. Another one. So brave. So foolish. Sarah, in a desperate move, grabbed Ben's lighter. It was still clutched in his frozen hand. She pried it free, her fingers numb. She flicked it. Again and again. Finally, a tiny flame. She held it up, a pathetic ward against an ancient evil.
Stay back, she cried, her voice trembling but firm. Sally hissed, a sound like steam escaping from a frozen pipe. The small flame seemed to cause her genuine discomfort, her form flickering. The lake, Noah suddenly croaked, pointing a shaking finger toward the broken doorway. Her power is tied to the lake. If we can get away from it, away from the forest, it was our only chance. Run, I yelled, shoving Sarah and Noah toward the door. I stood my ground for a precious second, swinging the useless poker, screaming defiance at the spectral child. She glided toward me, her hand outstretched, frost forming on the poker where it neared her. Sarah and Noah scrambled out. I turned and bolted after them, Sally's cold, sorrowful laughter echoing behind me. We ran, harder than we'd ever run. We didn't know where we were going, just away. Away from the cabin, away from the lake, away from her. The forest seemed to fight us, branches snagging, roots tripping. The whispers were all around us, promising cold, promising peace, promising an end to fear if we would just stop. But we didn't. We ran until our lungs burned and our legs were screaming. We ran until the trees began to thin, until we could see the faint gray light of pre-dawn filtering through the canopy. And then we burst out of Lake Valley Forest and collapsed onto the dew-damp grass of a farmer's field, the familiar, comforting sight of Havenwood Creek's distant lights, a beacon in the gloom. We looked back. The forest stood as a dark, silent wall. There was no sign of Sally, no whispers, just the ordinary sounds of a new day beginning. Only 3 of us made it out. Me, Sarah, and Noah. Liam, Maya, Ben, Chloe, Jake, Olivia, Ethan, Emily. 7 friends, lost to Sally's tears. The official story was a tragic accident. 10 teenagers, drunk and reckless, went swimming in a dangerous, prohibited lake. 7 drowned. 3 survivors, suffering from shock and hypothermia. Their accounts confused and unreliable.
They dragged the lake. They found nothing. No bodies. Ever. Just like all the others over the centuries, Sally keeps her company well hidden. We tried to tell them about Sally, about what we saw. They listened with pitying eyes. They offered grief counseling. They told us trauma can do strange things to the mind. But we know Sarah still has nightmares, her sketches filled with sorrowful watery graves. Noah pores over ancient texts, searching for a way to appease Sally, to free her, or perhaps to bind her. He says her hunger is growing, that the veil between her world and ours is thinning. And me, I can't go near water anymore. Not a lake, not a river, not even a bathtub without feeling that icy chill, hearing that faint, childlike hum. Lake Valley Forest is still there. Sally's tears still shimmer under the moonlight. Sally is still waiting. She got her retribution that night, but her sorrow, her rage, it's a bottomless well. Some games are not meant to be played. Some warnings are not meant to be ignored. And some souls, twisted by pain and injustice, can never find peace. They just find new playmates in the cold, dark water.
They say curiosity killed the cat. I wish it had just been a cat. I wish it had been anything but us. We were eight bright sparks, full of that stupid, intoxicating invincibility of youth. 8 friends who thought rules were suggestions and warnings were just dares in disguise. And the biggest dare of all, the one whispered about in hushed tones after lights out, was the old Blackwood place, hunched like a brooding beast at the edge of St. Augustine's Cemetery. Our parents, bless their worried hearts, had laid down the law. You stay away from there, you hear me? That house, it ain't right. Nothing good ever came from poking around Blackwood Manor. They'd share fragmented stories, shadows that moved on their own, whispers on the wind that knew your name. People who'd gone too close and come back different, or not at all. Of course, to a bunch of 15 and 16-year-olds, that was like waving a red flag at a bull, especially for Jake. Jake was our ringleader, all swagger and reckless charm. He lived for the thrill, the boundary pushed. His girlfriend, Mia, was the reluctant voice of reason, usually overridden. Then there was Sam, Jake's loyal, slightly dim-witted lieutenant. Chloe, quiet and easily spooked, who usually tagged along because her older brother Noah did. Noah was the pragmatist, always trying to find a logical explanation, even when logic had clearly packed its bags and fled. Emily was the artist, always sketching, drawn to the macabre beauty of decay. And then there was Ben, my best friend since kindergarten, the joker, who used humor to deflect fear. And then there was me, Leo. I was the observer, the one who felt the prickle of unease first, but was usually too hesitant to voice it loud enough. It was late October, the kind of autumn where the air bites with a premature chill and the leaves bleed crimson and gold before turning to skeletons underfoot. Halloween was just around the corner, and the usual teenage boredom was setting in. That's when Jake dropped the bomb. "I'm thinking we hit up Blackwood tonight," he announced during one of our aimless hangouts at the rusty old playground behind the school. A collective silence fell. Even Ben stopped mid-joke. Mia was the first to speak. "Are you insane, Jake? You know what our parents said, and it's right next to the cemetery." "Exactly," Jake grinned, his eyes alight. "Perfect atmosphere. Come on, what's the worst that can happen? We play a game, get a few chills, and make some memories." "Memories of what? Getting arrested for trespassing?" Noah countered, though I could see a flicker of interest in his eyes. "Or worse," Chloe whispered, hugging herself. "Remember what Mrs. Henderson said about the last kids who went up there?" Mrs. Henderson was our town's resident crone, full of dire prophecies and half-forgotten folklore. Her tales of Blackwood were legendary, involving shadowy figures, disembodied laughter,
and a hunger that never slept. Old wives' tales, Jake scoffed, but he didn't meet Chloe's gaze. Look, we'll just play one game, hide and seek, in and out. What's the harm? One game. Such simple words, such devastating consequences. The lure was too strong. The forbidden, the spooky, the shared thrill of defiance. By dusk, armed with cheap flashlights and a potent cocktail of bravado and anxiety, all 8 of us were creeping through the rusted iron gates of St. Augustine's. The cemetery itself was an unsettling appetizer. Weather-beaten headstones leaned at drunken angles, names and dates eroded by time and neglect. Shadows stretched long and distorted from the ancient gnarled oaks, looking like grasping claws. And there, at the far end, separated by a crumbling stone wall, loomed Blackwood Manor. It was a 2-story Victorian nightmare, its paint peeling like sunburned skin, windows like vacant eyes staring out from beneath a sagging, moss-covered roof. One side of the porch had collapsed, leaving a jagged maw. The garden was a riot of thorny bushes and weeds that clawed at our ankles. An unnatural silence clung to the place, as if even the crickets and owls knew better than to disturb its slumber. "Okay," Jake said, his voice a little too loud in the oppressive quiet. "Standard rules, one seeker. Everyone else hides. House and immediate grounds are fair game. The first one found is it for the next round. No backing out." He looked pointedly at Chloe. Ben tried to lighten the mood. "So, who wants to be it first? My money's on Chloe hiding under a tombstone and refusing to come out." "Not funny, Ben," Chloe muttered, her flashlight beam trembling. "I'll be it," I surprised myself by saying. Maybe I thought if I controlled the seeking, I could control the fear. How wrong I was. "All right, Leo, count to 100. No peeking." Jake clapped me on the shoulder, a little too enthusiastically. I leaned against a cold, surprisingly smooth obelisk near the cemetery wall, closed my eyes, and began to count. The sounds of my friends' hurried footsteps, their hushed giggles, and excited whispers faded into the rustling leaves and the groan of the old house settling. 98, 99, 100. Ready or not, here I come. I switched on my flashlight, its beam cutting a nervous sway through the gloom. The air had grown colder, and a faint, musty smell, like damp earth and something else, something faintly sweet and rotten, wafted from the direction of the house. The grounds were a maze of overgrown flower beds and crumbling statues. I checked behind a particularly grotesque gargoyle, its stone face frozen in a silent scream. No one. The collapsed section of the porch offered plenty of dark crevices, but they were empty. "Ollie all the oxen free," I called out, my voice sounding small and thin. A rustle came from near the back of the house, where an old, gnarled apple tree stood, its branches bare and claw-like. I crept closer, heart thumping. "Gotcha!" I swung my light around. It was Emily, trying to press herself flat against the rough bark. She yelped, then laughed nervously. Okay, you found me. Took you long enough." "Where are the others?" I asked. "Spread out, I think. Heard someone go towards the old cellar entrance around the side." We found Ben next, cowering comically inside a large, overturned rain barrel. He claimed he was communing with the spirits of stagnant water. Then Noah, ever the practical one, had wedged himself into a narrow gap between a chimney stack and the wall, almost invisible. 4 down, 4 to go. Mia, Jake, Chloe, and Sam were still missing. "Let's split up," Noah suggested. "Cover more ground." Emily went with Noah to the front of the house. Ben decided to recheck the outbuildings, a dilapidated shed, and what looked like an old carriage house. I headed towards the cellar entrance Emily had mentioned. It was a slanted wooden door, half buried in leaves and dirt. One of its hinges was broken, leaving it hanging crookedly. "Anyone down there?" I called, my voice echoing slightly. A faint giggle answered me. It sounded like Chloe, but off, higher pitched, almost playful in a way that didn't fit her usual nervous disposition. Chloe, is that you? The giggle came again from the darkness beyond the cellar door. I hesitated. The smell of damp earth and decay was stronger here. My skin prickled. This felt wrong. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back. But Chloe was my friend, and the rules were no backing out. I pulled the heavy door open further. It groaned in protest. A set of steep stone steps disappeared into blackness. Chloe? I ventured down a few steps, my flashlight beam dancing nervously. The air was frigid, and the silence was absolute, save for the drip, drip, drip of water somewhere in the depths. Then, a whisper right behind my ear. Not Chloe. I spun around, heart leaping into my throat. There was nothing there, just the oppressive darkness of the cellar. The steps behind me were empty. I scrambled back up, nearly tripping, my breath catching in my chest. That wasn't Chloe's voice. It was childlike, but ancient, cold. I found Noah and Emily near the front porch. Did you guys hear that in the cellar? Noah frowned. What hear? We didn't hear anything. A whisper and a giggle. I thought it was Chloe, but before I could finish, Ben came running from the direction of the carriage house, his face pale. Guys, you gotta see this. We followed him. The carriage house door was ajar. Inside, it was pitch black. Ben shone his light on the far wall. Scrawled in what looked like mud or something darker were crude, childlike drawings, stick figures, 8 of them. 7 were standing. 1 was lying down, with an X over it. Chloe. A cold dread washed over me. Where's Chloe? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. That's just it, Ben said, his usual humor gone. We can't find her. Or Sam. Or Jake. Or Mia. Panic began to set in. This wasn't fun anymore. Okay, new plan, Noah said, trying to sound authoritative, but his voice trembled slightly. We stick together, we find the others, and we get the hell out of here. Game over. We fanned out, but stayed within sight of each other, calling their names. Jake, Mia, Chloe, Sam. Our voices were swallowed by the encroaching darkness. The only reply was the sighing of the wind through the skeletal branches of the trees and the incessant, mournful creak of the old house. We found Sam first. Or rather, we found his baseball cap lying near the crumbling stone wall that separated the yard from the cemetery. There was no sign of Sam himself. He wouldn't just leave his hat, Ben said, picking it up. It was his favorite, worn and faded. Then Emily let out a small, choked scream. She was pointing towards the house. One of the grimy second-story windows, previously dark, now held a faint, flickering light, like a single candle. And silhouetted in that window, for just a second, was a figure, small, childlike. Then it was gone. Did you see that? Emily whispered, her eyes wide. It's probably Jake messing with us, Noah said, but his conviction was weak. No, that wasn't Jake. We had to go into the house. It was the only place they could be. The thought filled me with a primal terror, but the alternative, leaving our friends, was unthinkable. The front door was unlocked, or perhaps the lock had rotted away. It groaned open onto a grand, decaying foyer. Dust lay thick as snow on everything. Cobwebs hung like macabre candelabras. A sweeping staircase, its banister broken in places, led to the upper floor. The air was heavy, stagnant, and carried that same sweet, rotten scent, stronger now.
Jake, Mia, Noah called out, his voice echoing eerily in the vast space. A floorboard creaked upstairs. "You're up there," Ben whispered, pointing his flashlight towards the landing. We ascended the stairs cautiously, each creak and groan amplifying our fear. The second-floor hallway was a gallery of closed doors, each promising some new horror. The flickering light we'd seen from outside seemed to be coming from the room at the very end of the hall. As we approached, a sound drifted from behind the door, soft, rhythmic, singing. A child's nursery rhyme, sung in a high, thin voice, the same voice that whispered in the cellar. "Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, 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 we all fall down." The last words were drawn out, almost a sigh. Noah reached for the doorknob, then hesitated. Emily was shaking. Ben looked like he was about to be sick. I pushed past Noah and threw the door open. The room was a child's nursery, frozen in time. A rocking horse stood in one corner, its paint chipped, one glass eye missing. A dusty crib sat against the far wall, and in the center of the room, sitting on a small, child-sized chair, was Chloe. Her back was to us. She was humming that same tune, rocking gently. "Chloe!" Mia, who had suddenly appeared in the doorway behind us with Jake, gasped. They looked terrified. "We heard singing. We thought—" "Jake, what are you doing?" Jake asked, stepping into the room. "We've been looking all over for you." Chloe didn't respond. She just kept rocking and humming. Jake reached out and touched her shoulder. "Chloe!" Slowly, she turned her head. Her eyes were wide, vacant and staring. A thin trickle of blood ran from the corner of her mouth. And her smile? It was too wide, stretched unnaturally, a rictus of silent terror. And then we saw what was on the floor around her chair. Small, carved wooden dolls, 7 of them. Each was crudely resembling one of us. The doll that looked like Chloe had its eyes gouged out and a red smear across its smiling mouth. Mia screamed, a raw, piercing sound. That seemed to break the spell. Chloe slumped forward, falling from the chair like a puppet with its strings cut. Jake rushed to her, but it was too late. Her skin was cold, so cold. "What the hell is going on?" Ben stammered, backing away. Then, from the shadows in the corner of the room near the crib, came that giggle again. Light, airy, utterly devoid of warmth. "She fell down," the childlike voice whispered, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Now it's your turn to play." A gust of wind, icy and foul, swept through the room, extinguishing our flashlights. We were plunged into darkness, save for the faint moonlight filtering through the grimy window. Panic erupted. We scrambled, bumping into each other, desperate to get out. "The door!" Noah yelled. I felt a small, cold hand brush my ankle. I kicked out, yelled, and stumbled back. When Jake finally managed to get his flashlight working again, its beam erratically lighting the scene, Sam was gone, vanished from our midst in the seconds of darkness. "Sam! Sam!" Jake roared, swinging his light around wildly. Only his panicked breathing answered. "He's hiding," the voice tittered, closer now. "Can you find him?" Another of the wooden dolls on the floor, the one that looked like Sam, now lay on its side, its head twisted at an unnatural angle. We had to get out. We bolted from the nursery and down the hallway, stumbling, pushing, fear lending us a desperate speed. The house seemed to fight us.
Doors slammed shut in our faces. Shadows writhed in the periphery of our vision, taking on grotesque shapes. Whispers echoed from the walls, calling our names in distorted, mocking tones. Leo, come play with me, Leo. Mia, pretty Mia, don't you want to stay? We reached the top of the main staircase, and there, at the bottom, blocking our escape, stood a figure. It was small, no bigger than a child of 7 or 8 years, shrouded in what looked like a tattered, old-fashioned nightdress. Its face was obscured by shadow, but 2 points of pale, luminous light gleamed where its eyes should be.
The game's not over yet, it whispered, its voice a horrifying blend of youthful innocence and ancient malice. "Get out of our way!" Jake yelled, fear making him reckless. He started down the stairs. The figure raised a small, delicate hand, and the staircase twisted. Wood groaned and splintered. The section Jake was on buckled, sending him tumbling downwards with a sickening crunch. He lay still at the bottom, his limbs at unnatural angles. Mia screamed his name, a sound of pure anguish, and tried to run to him, but Noah and I held her back. It's too late, Mia," Noah choked out, his face ashen. The little figure at the bottom of the stairs giggled again, a sound that scraped at my sanity. It took a step towards Jake's still form. On the floor of the foyer, another doll, Jake's effigy, broke in half. "The back way!" Emily shrieked, pointing towards a dark corridor leading off the foyer. "There has to be a kitchen, a service exit." We didn't need convincing. We turned and fled down the corridor, the childlike laughter echoing behind us. The corridor seemed to stretch endlessly, doors lining either side. Each one we tried was locked or opened into a dark, empty room that felt like a trap. Then Ben, who was slightly ahead, cried out, "This one! It leads outside!" He'd found a heavy wooden door, bolted from the inside. He fumbled with the rusty latch. Behind us, we heard it. Not footsteps. Skittering, dragging sound, like something small but unnaturally strong, pulling itself along the floorboards. Getting closer. "Hurry, Ben," Mia sobbed. The bolt finally slid back with a screech of protesting metal. Ben threw the door open. Fresh night air, cool and clean, washed over us. Freedom. Ben plunged out, then Emily, then Mia. Noah was ushering me through when he suddenly gasped and clutched his chest. He looked down. A small dark stain was blooming on his shirt. He stumbled, his eyes wide with shock and pain. Behind him, framed in the doorway, stood the child thing. It held something long and thin in its hand, like a sharpened piece of bone or dark wood dripping with something dark. Noah's doll, previously clutched in its other hand, fell to the floor, impaled through the chest. "Tag," it whispered, its luminous eyes fixed on Noah. Noah collapsed, his body hitting the kitchen floor with a dull thud. I screamed, a wordless sound of terror and grief. I wanted to help him, but Mia and Emily were already pulling me away, dragging me out into the night. We ran. We ran blindly, through the overgrown garden, towards the cemetery wall, the sounds of the house, the creaking, the whispers, the awful, playful laughter fading slightly behind us. We scrambled over the low stone wall, back into the relative sanity of St. Augustine's. We didn't stop running until we burst out of the cemetery gates and onto the familiar, paved street of our town. We didn't look back. Not until we were huddled together under a streetlight, gasping for breath, clothes torn, bodies bruised, and souls shattered. There were only 4 of us left. Me, Mia, Emily, and Ben. Chloe,
Sam, Jake, Noah, gone. The police investigation was inconclusive. They found the Blackwood Manor ransacked, signs of a struggle, but nobody. No trace of our missing friends. Just those 7 crude dolls in the nursery, the 8th one, mine, untouched, sitting on that small chair as if waiting. They talked about runaways, about a prank gone horribly wrong. They looked at us, 4 traumatized teenagers babbling about a ghostly child and a deadly game, and they saw shock, grief, and maybe even guilt. They didn't see belief. We never spoke of it again. Not really. Not in detail. How could we? How could we explain the inexplicable evil that had come out to play with us that night? Mia moved away a year later, unable to bear the constant reminders. Emily threw herself into her art, but her sketches became darker, filled with shadows and haunted eyes. Ben never really joked again. His laughter died in that house. And me, I live with it. Every day. I see their faces in my nightmares. I hear that giggle in the quiet moments. I know what's still in that house, waiting. The Blackwood Manor still stands, a rotting monument to our youthful folly. Sometimes, on quiet nights, when the wind is just right, they say you can still hear the faint sound of a child singing. Some games are not meant to be played. Some doors are not meant to be opened. And some places are best left to the things that dwell in the dark. Because when evil comes to play, it always wins. It's still playing its game, I think. And it's just waiting for new players to join.
There are lines, you know. Invisible boundaries are drawn by common sense, by fear, by the hushed warnings of those who've seen too much. Lines that separate the everyday from the other. We were 10 souls teetering on the cusp of adulthood, convinced of our own immortality, drunk on the heady brew of youth and recklessness. And old man Jimmy's field, that was a line we didn't just cross, we stumped on it, laughed at it, and paid a price so steep that it's still being collected, piece by bloody piece, from the fragments of my sanity. Our little town of Havenwood was the kind of place where everyone knew your business, and local legends were passed down like family heirlooms. The most potent of these, the one that made even the toughest kids glance over their shoulders, was the story of old man Jimmy Blackwood and his cornfield. Jimmy had been dead for 20 years, a recluse even in life. But his presence, they said, still clung to that patch of land like mildew to damp stone. His field sat at the edge of town, bordered by a dark, tangled stretch of woods on one side and the lonely, seldom-used railway tracks on the other. And in the center of that field, year after year, even long after Jimmy was gone and the land lay fallow, stood the scarecrow. It wasn't your typical friendly-faced straw man. This thing was an abomination. Its clothes were Jimmy's own tattered overalls and plaid shirt, sun-bleached and stiff with age. Its head was a burlap sack, crudely stitched, with mismatched button eyes that seemed to follow you, and a jagged, sewn-on grin that was anything but cheerful. Its arms, made of gnarled branches, were outstretched as if in a perpetual, silent warning.
or an embrace. Our parents, all of them, had a singular ironclad rule: stay out of Jimmy's field, and for God's sake, don't ever touch that scarecrow. They never elaborated much, just traded knowing, shadowed glances. Some whispered Jimmy had practiced old, dark folk magic. Others said the scarecrow wasn't just a bird deterrent. It was a guardian, a sentinel. Of what, no one was quite sure, but the implication was clear. It was best left undisturbed. Of course, for 10 teenagers simmering in the boredom of a long, hot August, just before school was due to start again, best left undisturbed sounded like an invitation. There was Liam, our self-proclaimed leader, always itching for a thrill. His girlfriend, Maya, is usually the voice of reason, but is often swayed by Liam's charisma. Noah, the quiet, intense one, had a morbid fascination with local lore. His younger sister, Chloe, is sweet and easily frightened, but terrified of being left out. Sam, the joker, who used humor as a shield. His girlfriend, Olivia, is sharp-witted and fiercely loyal. Then there was Ethan, the jock, all muscle and bravado. Jess, who always seemed to be filming everything on her phone. Dan, Liam's best friend, is just as reckless. And me, Alex. I was the observer, the one who usually felt the first prickle of unease, the one who this time should have screamed louder to stop us. The dare was inevitable, hatched during a late-night gathering around a bonfire, fueled by cheap beer and teenage arrogance. A midnight run through Jimmy's field and a selfie with our straw-stuffed friend, Liam proposed, his eyes gleaming in the firelight. A nervous ripple went through the group. "Are you crazy?" Maya said, though there was a thrill in her voice too. "You know the stories." "Stories are for kids," Ethan scoffed, flexing. "It's just an old field and a dumb scarecrow." "My grandma says it watches," Chloe whispered, hugging her knees. "She says Jimmy put something of himself in it." Sam snorted. "Yeah, probably his old socks. Come on, Chlo. It'll be an adventure." The logical part of my brain, the part that still listened to the echoes of my parents' warnings, screamed, "No!" But the pull of the group, the fear of being branded a coward, the intoxicating allure of the forbidden, it was too strong. So just after midnight, under a sliver of a moon that offered little comfort and even less light, 10 of us piled out of Dan's beat-up truck at the edge of Jimmy Blackwood's notorious field. The corn stood tall, at least 7 feet, dry and brittle, the rows like dark, suffocating corridors. The air was thick, unnaturally still, and carried a faint cloying scent, something like rotting vegetation and damp earth, with an undertone of something else, something metallic, like old blood. We pushed our way in, flashlights cutting nervous, dancing beams through the oppressive darkness. The rustling of the stalks around us sounded like whispers, like secrets being shared just out of earshot. "Creepy, right?" Jess murmured, her phone already out, recording. "Nah, it's awesome," Liam said, a little too loud. He was clearly trying to project confidence.
We found it in the very center of the field, in a small circular clearing. The scarecrow. It was worse up close. The button eyes seemed to glint with a malevolent light of their own,
despite the darkness. The stitched grin looked like a fresh wound. Its clothes were stiff, not just with age, but as if something had dried within them, making them rigid. One of its straw-stuffed hands had what looked like a dark stain on it. "Okay, photo op," Liam announced, trying to break the sudden, heavy silence that had fallen over us. We crowded around it, forcing grins, trying to look brave for Jess's phone. Ethan, ever the show-off, put his arm around the scarecrow's shoulder. "Say cheese, Jimmy," he slurred, slightly drunk. As he did, he stumbled, lurching against the scarecrow's supporting pole. There was a dry, cracking sound. The pole, old and rotted at the base, snapped. The scarecrow toppled forward, landing face down in the dirt with a soft, dull thud. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. It felt sacrilegious, like we'd knocked over a tombstone in a churchyard. Then Sam broke the silence with a nervous laugh. "Oops, guess Jimmy's taking a dirt nap." We should fix it," Chloe stammered, her face pale in flashlight beams. "Fix it? It's just straw and old clothes," Ethan scoffed, though his bravado was visibly shaken. He nudged the fallen figure with his foot. "See? Nothing." As his foot connected, the burlap sack head lolled to one side. One of the button eyes popped off, rolling a short distance into the dirt. "Oh God, we need to get out of here, now!" Liam, looking unnerved for the first time, nodded. "Yeah, okay. The fun's over. Let's go." We turned to leave, a new urgency in our steps. But as we reached the edge of the clearing, a sound stopped us. A low groan, like wood under pressure, or something waking up. It came from behind us, from the fallen scarecrow. We spun around. Our flashlights converged on the spot where it lay. It was moving. Not dramatically, not like in a movie, just a twitch, a subtle shifting of its limbs, as if unseen muscles were contracting. The straw inside it rustled, a dry whispering sound that made the hair on my arms stand on end. "Did you see that?" Jess breathed, her phone shaking in her hand. "It's just the wind," Noah said, but his voice lacked conviction. The air was dead still. Then, one of its gnarled branch arms scraped against the dirt, fingers of twig and rotted cloth curling, digging for purchase. Slowly, agonizingly, it began to push itself up. It rose, not like a man, but like an insect unfolding, its movements jerky and unnatural. Its head, still missing an eye, lolled on its neck, the single button eye fixing on us with an unblinking, predatory focus. The stitched grin seemed wider, hungrier. "Run!" Liam screamed. And we did. 10 teenagers, suddenly stripped of all bravado, scattered like frightened birds into the labyrinthine rows of corn. The last thing I saw as I plunged into the stalks was the scarecrow, fully upright now, taking a stiff, halting step out of the clearing, its head slowly swiveling as if tasting the air, choosing its first prey. The cornfield, which had felt oppressive before, now felt actively malevolent. The stalks seemed to claw at us, to trip us. Every rustle sounded like pursuit. We were separated almost immediately, our panicked shouts swallowed by the dense vegetation. "Maya! Alex! Where are you?" I heard Liam yelling somewhere to my left. "Over here!" I shouted back, thrashing through the stalks. Then a scream, high-pitched, terrified. "Chloe!" It was cut off abruptly. "Chloe!" Noah shrieked, his voice cracking with terror. Silence, then a soft dragging sound. moved away from where Chloe's scream had originated. "What was that? Oh God, what was that?" Olivia sobbed, somewhere nearby. We blundered around, calling out names, flashlights uselessly probing the impenetrable walls of corn. Panic was a living thing, coiling in my stomach, choking my breath. I stumbled into a small, less dense patch and found Maya and Liam huddled together, their faces stark white. "Did you hear Chloe?" Maya whispered, clutching Liam's arm. Before he could answer, Jess burst out of the corn nearby, her eyes wild, the phone still gripped in her hand, though it was no longer recording. It's got Dan," she gasped, tears streaming down her face. It dragged him into the corn. His legs, oh God, his legs." We didn't need details. The image was horrifying enough. "We have to get to the truck," Liam said, trying to rally us. "Stick together. Don't let it separate us."
Easier said than done. The field was a maze, and something was actively hurting us, toying with us. We'd think we were heading towards the edge, only to find ourselves deeper in. We found Ethan next, or what was left of him. He was propped up against a row of corn, almost like he was sitting, but his head was twisted at an impossible angle, his eyes wide and staring, not at us, but at something unseen in the sky. His chest was torn open, stuffed with dry, bloody corn husks, a grotesque parody of a scarecrow. Sam threw up violently. Olivia just stared, a silent scream trapped in her throat. This wasn't just killing. This was personal. A punishment. A mockery. "It's playing with us," Noah whispered, his face a mask of dawning horror. "It's making us into it." The dragging sound came again, closer this time, from multiple directions. It was hunting, systematically. We ran, blindly, no direction, just pure, unadulterated flight. I lost sight of the others. One moment, Liam was right beside me. The next, he was gone, swallowed by the rustling darkness. I heard him shout my name, once, a desperate, fading cry. Then, nothing. I kept running. I could hear Jess sobbing somewhere to my right, and Sam yelling incoherently. Then, a new sound. A low, guttural chuckle. Not human. It was dry, like rustling leaves, but filled with a hideous, ancient amusement. It seemed to come from the scarecrow, though its stitched mouth didn't move. It was a sound projected, perhaps into our minds. "Lost, little birds, time to come home to roost," it seemed to whisper inside my head, a voice like grinding stones. I stumbled and fell, my flashlight skittering away into the darkness. I lay there, breathless, heart hammering, convinced this was it. But the sounds of pursuit, the rustling, the dragging, seemed to move past me, focusing on other, more panicked movements. I crawled blindly through the dirt and sharp stalks, trying to make myself small, invisible. The screams continued, sporadically, each one a fresh stab of terror and grief. Olivia's name was cried out by Sam, then Sam's own roar of defiance, followed by a horrifying gurgle. Then, an almost unbearable silence, broken only by the rustling of the corn and that awful, dry chuckle that seemed to echo from the very soil. I don't know how long I lay there, paralyzed by fear. It felt like an eternity. The sliver of moon had vanished, hidden by clouds, plunging the field into near total blackness. Eventually, a desperate primal urge to survive overrode the terror. I had to get out. I started crawling again,
feeling my way, trying to head in what I hoped was the direction of the railway tracks. Every snap of a twig under my hand sounded like a gunshot in the silence. I bumped into something soft. I recoiled, stifling a scream. Reaching out a trembling hand, I felt denim, a shoe. It was Noah. He was lying on his side, curled up. I couldn't see his face in the dark, but I knew. The stillness of him was absolute. The faint, coppery smell of blood hung heavy in the air around him. Grief and terror warred within me. I wanted to scream, to cry, but no sound would come. I had to keep moving. After what felt like hours, the corn began to thin. I could see the faint, ghostly outline of the trees bordering the field. And then, the glint of moonlight on metal, the railway tracks. I scrambled out of the last row of corn onto the gravel embankment, gasping, sobbing, my body shaking uncontrollably. I looked back at the field. It was a wall of blackness, silent now, but I could feel it, the presence, watching me. And then I saw it, standing at the very edge of the corn, silhouetted against the slightly less dark sky, was the scarecrow. It was perfectly still, its one button eye seeming to bore into me even from that distance. It didn't move. It didn't have to. Its message was clear. I'll let you go for now, to tell the tale, to remember.
I ran along those tracks until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I eventually stumbled onto a deserted country road, and then, by some miracle, a pre-dawn trucker found me. A hysterical, mud-caked mess babbling about a scarecrow. The police came, of course. They searched Jimmy's field. They found signs of a struggle, scattered clothing. Jess's phone was smashed. My flashlight, pools of dried blood that the official report later attributed to animal predation after a tragic accident involving alcohol and trespassing. They never found any bodies. Not Liam, Maya, Chloe, Sam, Olivia, Ethan, Jess, Dan, or Noah. 9 friends vanished. They said we ran off, that we were hiding, that we'd turn up. They never did. They tried to get me to say it was a prank gone wrong, that we'd all just gotten scared and scattered. But I told them the truth. I told them about the scarecrow, about it moving, about the sounds, the whispers, the way it hunted us. They sent me to a psychiatrist. Post-traumatic stress, they called it. Hallucinations brought on by shock and guilt. But I know what I saw. I know what happened in that field. Old Man Jimmy's field is still there. The town council tried to plow it under once, a few years after it happened. The tractor broke down. The driver swore he saw the scarecrow move. He quit on the spot. No one's dared to go near it since. Sometimes, on nights when the wind is right, and I'm stupid enough to drive by that lonely stretch of road, I look over at that dark expanse of corn, and I swear I can see it, standing there, its single button eye gleaming, its stitched grin is wider than ever, waiting. It's still out there. It took my friends
took pieces of them perhaps to mend itself, to feed itself, and it left me a messenger, a warning. Some games are not meant to be played. Some lines are not meant to be crossed. And some things, once broken, can never truly be fixed. They just change. They become something else, something hungry, something that remember.
They say some places are best left undisturbed. Sacred ground, they call it, or cursed. I used to scoff at stories like that. Thought they were just old wives' tales, campfire spooky stuff. Then came Pearl Peak. Then came the Whispering Pines Resort. Then it came into play, and I learned that some truths are written in blood, etched into your soul with the screams of your friends. It was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime. 6 of us, inseparable since college. Liam, our de facto leader, always planning, always enthusiastic. His girlfriend, Maya, was sharp and practical, the grounding force to his boundless energy. Then there was Chloe, quick-witted and cynical, but fiercely loyal. Her boyfriend, Mark, the Joker, was always ready with a stupid pun to lighten the mood, even when it wasn't appropriate. Sarah, quiet and artistic, the most sensitive of our group, always seeing beauty where others missed it. And me, Alex. I guess I was the observer, the one who tried to keep a level head. We'd been planning this hike to Pearl Peak for over a year. The brochures painted a picture of rugged majesty, pristine wilderness, and the luxurious, if isolated, Whispering Pines Resort, nestled near its base, our reward after a challenging ascent. 15 cabins, a main lodge, and supposedly a view to die for. Little did we know how literal that would become. The drive up was filled with laughter, bad sing-alongs, and the usual pre-adventure buzz. Even the sky, a brilliant, almost painful blue, seemed to promise perfection. We checked into the resort late afternoon. Elias Thorne, the owner, was a weathered man in his late 50s, with eyes that seemed to hold the mountain's secrets. He was polite, but there was a weariness about him, a subtle shadow I couldn't quite place. "Just yourselves and a few other parties tonight," he'd said, handing us our keys. Cabin 7, one of the larger ones, perfect for our group. Weather's set to turn by morning, though. Big storm rolling in. Best get your hiking done early if you're planning on it. There were indeed other guests, an older couple, the Hendersons, celebrating an anniversary, a stern-looking businessman glued to his laptop in the lodge, a young family with 2 boisterous kids, a solo hiker, a woman with an intense gaze. 9 others, besides Elias and his skeletal staff of 2, a quiet cook, and a teenage girl who helped with cleaning. 15 souls, including us, trapped. That first night was idyllic. We cooked a huge meal and drank cheap wine, and Mark, true to form, regaled us with terrible ghost stories that made Chloe roll her eyes and Sarah shiver playfully. The air was crisp, the stars blazed with an intensity you only get far from city lights. We felt utterly, blissfully alone in the wilderness. The next morning, we were up before dawn, eager to conquer Pearl Peak. The trail was tougher than anticipated, a winding, steep ascent through dense pine forests that seemed to swallow a sound. The higher we climbed, the more the mood shifted. The bird song, so vibrant at the base, thinned out, replaced by an unearning silence. The wind, when it gusted through the trees, sounded less like a natural force and more like whispers, just on the edge of hearing. Sarah was the first to voice it. "Does anyone else feel watched?" she murmured, her face pale. Mark tried to joke. "Yeah, by that squirrel over there. Probably judging your hiking boots, Sarah." But his laughter was hollow. Even Chloe, our resident skeptic, kept glancing over her shoulder. Liam, ever the pragmatist, blamed it on altitude and exertion. "We're just tired. Let's push to the summit, get our photos, and head back down before that storm hits." The summit was breathtaking, a panoramic vista of jagged peaks and endless forest. But the beauty was tainted by an oppressive atmosphere. The whispers were stronger here, seeming to coil around us, carrying no discernible words, just a sibilant, malevolent hiss. We took our photos quickly, the smiles forced, an unspoken urgency hurrying our descent.
The storm Elias warned us about hit with a vengeance as we were halfway down. It wasn't a gradual buildup. It was like a switch flipped. One moment, gray skies. The next, a torrential downpour. The wind howling like a banshee, and the temperature plummeting. Visibility dropped to near zero. We stumbled back to the resort, soaked, freezing, and deeply unsettled. The power was already out. The main lodge was lit by emergency lanterns and a roaring fire in the hearth. Elias was trying to soothe rattled guests. "Generators out too," he grimaced. "Fuel line must have frozen or snapped in this wind. Phone lines are down. We're cut off until this blows over." Cut off. The words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. We retreated to cabin 7, stripping off wet clothes and huddling around the small wood-burning stove. Mark tried to lighten the mood again, but his jokes fell flat. We were all on edge. The unsettling feeling from the mountain had followed us down, amplified by the raging storm. The first incident happened around dusk. Elias kept 2 large mountain dogs, supposedly for bear protection. They were usually boisterous, friendly beasts, but as darkness fell, they began to bark frantically, a desperate, terrified sound that cut through the storm's roar. Then, abruptly, silence, a yelp, cut short, then nothing. Liam and I, armed with heavy flashlights, volunteered to check. Elias, looking grimmer than ever, joined us. The wind tore at us, rain lashing our faces. We found them near the edge of the woods, by the generator shed, or what was left of them. I won't describe it. Even now, the memory makes my stomach churn. It wasn't a bear or a wolf. No animal I've ever known could do that. It was systematic, brutal. Elias just stared, his face a mask of dawning horror. "It started," he whispered, so low I barely heard him over the wind. "What started?" Liam demanded, his voice shaking. Elias just shook his head, his eyes wide with a fear that was ancient. "Get inside. Lock your doors. Don't open them for anyone." We retreated to our cabin, and the image of the dogs was seared into our minds. We told the others, our voices trembling. Mark was white as a sheet. Chloe was actually crying silently. Sarah was rocking back and forth, muttering, "It wasn't the mountain. It was in the mountain." Sleep was impossible. Every gust of wind sounded like a footstep, every creak of the cabin like a door opening. Around midnight, the screaming started. It came from cabin 3, where the Hendersons, the elderly couple, were staying. A woman's shriek, high-pitched, raw with terror, followed by a man's choked cry. Then that same awful, tearing sound
we'd heard faintly from the dogs. Liam, despite Elias's warning, grabbed a heavy iron poker from the fireplace. "We have to help them." "No!" Maya grabbed his arm, her eyes wild. "Elias said to stay put. We don't know what's out there." But the screams spurred us. Me, Liam, and Mark, armed with flashlights and whatever makeshift weapons we could find, a kitchen knife for Mark, the poker for Liam, a heavy log for me, cautiously opened our door. The storm was a maelstrom. The rain felt like needles. The wind threatened to rip the door from its hinges. We could barely see 10 feet. Cabin 3 was just a few doors down. Its door was ajar, a faint, flickering light spilling from within. A dropped flashlight, perhaps. Liam pushed the door open wider. The scene inside. God, the Hendersons were. They were everywhere. It was a charnel house. The air was thick with the coppery, sweet scent of blood. And in the center of the room, illuminated by our wavering flashlights, was it. It was a thing of nightmare. Tall, impossibly thin, its limbs too long, jointed at unnatural angles. It was hunched over something on the floor, and as our lights hit it, it slowly turned its head. Its skin was the color of wet earth stretched taut over sharp bones. But the eyes, they were pits of burning embers glowing with a malevolent intelligence. It let out a sound, not a roar, but a wet, clicking chuff, like laughter made of breaking twigs and tearing flesh. Mark let out a choked gasp and stumbled back, dropping his knife. The creature straightened, and it was impossibly tall, its head nearly brushing the low ceiling. It moved with a fluid, unnatural grace, like a stalking predator, but nothing earthly. Liam, to his credit, didn't freeze. He lunged, poker raised, shouting a wordless battle cry. The creature simply sidestepped, impossibly fast, and one of its long, spindly arms, ending in what looked like elongated, razor-sharp talons, lashed out. It caught Liam across the chest. Liam crumpled without a sound, the poker clattering to the floor. Blood bloomed across his shirt. Dark. So much dark. Maya, who had followed us against our pleas, screamed, a sound of pure, undiluted agony.
That scream seemed to galvanize the creature. It turned its burning eyes towards her. Mark, bless his terrified soul, grabbed Maya's arm.
"Run! Get back to the cabin! Alex, go!"
He shoved Maya towards me. Then, incredibly, he turned back towards the creature, picking up a fallen chair and holding it like a shield. "Get out of here!" he yelled, his voice cracking. I didn't need to tell twice. I half-dragged, half-carried a sobbing Maya back towards cabin 7, her feet stumbling. Chloe and Sarah were at our door, their faces etched with terror. We scrambled inside, barricading the door with a heavy chest of drawers. We heard Mark scream, a short, sharp sound, cut off with sickening finality. Then, a splintering crash, like a chair being smashed to pieces. Chloe collapsed against the door, sobbing, "Mark! Oh God, Mark!" Sarah was catatonic, staring blankly at the wall. Maya was shaking uncontrollably, muttering Liam's name over and over. I felt numb. My best friends, gone. Just like that. The cabin was a tomb of fear. We could hear it outside. Not footsteps exactly, more like a slithering, dragging sound, punctuated by those awful, clicking chuffs. It circled our cabin, testing the windows and the door.
We could hear its claws scraping against the wood. Then the whispers started. Not the wind this time. These were insidious, inside our heads. "Let me in," it seemed to sigh, the voice a chorus of rustling leaves and dying breaths. "It's so cold out here. I just want to play." Sarah started whimpering. "Make it stop. Please, make it stop." The voice changed, morphing, taking on familiar tones. "Alex, it's Liam. I'm hurt. Please, let me in." My heart lurched. Could it be? Had he somehow survived? Maya looked up, a flicker of desperate hope in her eyes. "Liam?" But Chloe, her face streaked with tears and grime, shook her head fiercely. "No, it's not him. It's a trick." The creature outside slammed against the door. The wood groaned, splinters flying. "We have to get out of here," I croaked, my voice hoarse. "It's going to get in." "Where can we go?" Maya whispered. "It's everywhere." "The main lodge," I said, thinking fast. "Elias, maybe he knows something. Maybe there are more people there. Strength in numbers." It was a flimsy hope, but it was all we had. The back window of our cabin faced a dense thicket of trees, leading indirectly towards the lodge. It was a small window, but maybe, just maybe. The creature slammed against the door again, harder this time. A crack appeared. "Now!" I yelled. We worked frantically, prying open the small back window. Chloe, small and agile, squeezed through first, then Sarah, who I had to physically push, her limbs stiff with terror. Maya followed, her movements jerky. I was last. As I scrambled through, I heard a tremendous crash from the front of the cabin. The door had given way. I didn't look back. We ran, blindly, through the storm, tripping over roots, branches lashing our faces. The wind and rain were our only cover. We could hear it behind us, that awful, dragging sound, surprisingly fast. It was hunting us. The main lodge loomed out of the darkness, a few emergency lanterns still flickering within. The door was slightly ajar. We burst inside, gasping for breath, soaked to the bone. The scene was of utter devastation. The stern-looking businessman was, well, he was in pieces, scattered across the lobby floor. The young family, I saw a small, discarded teddy bear near the overturned reception desk, spattered with something dark. My stomach heaved. Elias Torn was backed into a corner, a heavy shotgun in his trembling hands. His face was ashen. The solo hiker, the intense woman, stood near him, a hunting knife clutched in her fist, her eyes darting around wildly. The cook and the teenage girl were nowhere to be seen. "It got them," Elias rasped, his voice barely audible. "It got them all, except us." "What is it?" Chloe demanded, her voice shaking. Elias looked us, his eyes hollow. "It's the mountain's hunger, an old thing, an evil thing. It sleeps for generations, then the conditions are right. A bad storm, and of souls trapped. It wakes, and it plays." "Plays," I repeated, horrified. "It enjoys the fear. It feeds on it before it feeds on the rest." Her name, we later learned, was Anya. Suddenly, a tapping sound from the chimney. We all looked up. The tapping grew more insistent, accompanied by a dry, rustling sound. Soot began to fall into the hearth. "It's in the chimney," Anya breathed. Elias raised his shotgun, his hands shaking so badly I feared he'd misfire. "It can't. It's too narrow." The long, impossibly thin limb, dark and glistening,
snaked down from the chimney opening, its taloned end twitching, feeling the air. Sarah screamed, a high, piercing sound that seemed to delight the creature. The limb retracted, and then something large and dark dropped into the hearth with a heavy thud, scattering embers and ash. It unfolded itself, like a nightmarish origami. The same creature from cabin 3, its burning eyes fixed on Sarah. It moved towards her, not quickly, but with a horrifying deliberateness. Sarah was frozen, her eyes wide with terror. "Pretty, pretty song," it whispered in our minds, its voice like nails on slate. "Sing for me again." Chloe, in a burst of desperate courage, grabbed a heavy candlestick from a nearby table and threw it. It struck the creature on its narrow torso with a dull thud. The thing barely flinched, but its head snapped towards Chloe, its ember eyes flaring. It lunged. Chloe stumbled back, tripping over a rug. Before any of us could react, it was on her. One swift, brutal movement. Her scream was cut short. I don't know what snapped in me. Rage, grief, sheer primal terror. I saw the shotgun Elias had dropped when he recoiled in horror. I snatched it up. I'd never fired a gun in my life, but adrenaline is a powerful teacher. I aimed at the center of its mass and pulled the trigger. The blast threw me back a step. The creature shrieked, a sound that wasn't animalistic, but full of rage and pain. It staggered, dark, Icarus fluid oozing from a ragged hole in its side. But it wasn't down. It turned its burning gaze on me. "You hurt me." The whisper in my head was laced with fury. "You will pay." It started towards me, faster this time, its unnatural gait terrifyingly swift. Anya yelled, "The kitchen! The back door!" Maya jolted into action and grabbed my arm, pulling me. Elias finally seemed to recover some sense and followed. We scrambled towards the kitchen, the creature right behind us, its dragging footsteps echoing in the lodge. The kitchen was a wreck, with pans and utensils scattered. The cook lay near the stove, her eyes wide and lifeless. The back door was bolted. Elias fumbled with the bolt, his hand shaking. "Hurry," Anya urged, watching the kitchen entrance, her knife held ready. The creature appeared in the doorway, its silhouette filling the frame. It paused, its head tilting, as if savoring our fear. The bolt finally gave. Elias threw the door open. Outside, the storm still raged, but it was pre-dawn, a faint, bruised light beginning to filter through the clouds. "Go! Run for the old access road!" Elias yelled, shoving us out. "It hates the light! It weakens it!" He turned back, raising the shotgun again. "I'll hold it off!" "No!" Maya cried. "Go!" he roared and fired. Another shriek from the creature. We ran, Maya, Anya, and me. We didn't look back. We heard another shot, then a human scream of agony, abruptly silenced. Then a triumphant, guttural roar from the creature. Elias was gone.
We ran until our lungs burned and our legs were lead. The old access road was barely visible, overgrown and muddy. The storm was beginning to abate, the rain softening to a drizzle, the wind losing its demonic fury. As true dawn broke, tinting the sky in hues of gray and sickly yellow, we risked a look back. Whispering Pines Resort was a dark smudge against the mountainside, and standing on the ridge above it, silhouetted against the clearing sky, was a tall, impossibly thin figure. It watched us. Even from that distance, I felt its burning gaze. Then,
As the first rays of weak sunlight touched the peak, it seemed to dissolve, to melt back into the shadows of the mountain. We walked for hours. Eventually, we hit a main road. A bewildered trucker picked us up. The authorities, when they finally arrived at Whispering Pines, found nothing. No bodies, no creature, just a ransacked resort with signs of a struggle and blood. So much blood. They called it a freak bear attack exacerbated by the storm. Said we were suffering from trauma-induced hysteria. But we know what we saw. Anya, Maya, and me. We are the only survivors of the 15 souls who were at Whispering Pines when evil came to play. Sarah, Mark, Liam, Chloe, Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, the businessman, the young family, Elias, the cook, the teenage girl, even the solo hiker, Anya, though she survived, is a ghost of her former self. Maya rarely speaks anymore. Me? I look at mountains differently now. I hear whispers in the wind, and I know they're not just the wind. Pearl Peak, Whisper Wind Peak, as some old maps apparently call it. It still stands, silent and majestic, waiting for the right conditions, waiting for new players. Because some places are best left undisturbed, and some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed. The evil is still out there, and it remembers. It remembers the game, and it remembers those who heard it. They say curiosity is a virtue, that knowledge is power. They're wrong. Some knowledge is a contagion, a creeping rot that infects the soul. Some books are not meant to be opened, their pages filled not with wisdom, but with a summons. We were 15 bright, arrogant sparks, convinced the world revolved around us, that warnings were just background noise to our grand teenage symphony. And the book, that damned book, it was a siren song, promising forbidden thrills, and we, like fools, sailed straight into its teeth. Our town, Oak Haven, was small, the kind of place where secrets festered beneath the veneer of sleepy normalcy. And the oldest, darkest secret was whispered in hushed tones, usually by anxious parents trying to scare their wayward children straight. It concerned a book, not just any book. The grimoire of games, some called it. Others, more ominously, the Reaper's Invitation. It was said to be ancient, bound in human skin, though that was probably just dramatic embellishment, and filled with games. Games that weren't games at all. Games that, if played, would call something forth. Something that played for keeps. Something they called the Reaper. The warnings were explicit, delivered with a gravity that, in hindsight, should have terrified us. If you ever see that book, you run. You don't touch it. You don't open it. And for the love of all that's holy, you never play its games. They said it had surfaced periodically throughout Oak Haven's history, always preceding a string of unexplained disappearances, always vanishing again once its quota was met. 15 of us, a sprawling, boisterous group, knitted together by shared classes, hormones, and a mutual disdain for adult authority. There was Maya, our unofficial leader, bold and charismatic, always pushing boundaries. Her boyfriend Liam, is loyal and easily goaded. Chloe, the quiet observer, who saw more than she let on. Her older brother Noah, the pragmatist, always trying to debunk the supernatural, yet secretly fascinated by it. Then there was Sam, the class clown, whose jokes often masked a deep-seated anxiety. His girlfriend, Olivia, sharp-tongued and fiercely protective. Ava, the artist, drawn to the macabre. Ben, the jock, all confidence and bravado. Jess, who documented everything on her phone, a digital chronicler of our impending doom. Twin brothers Tom and Will, always together, always up for mischief. Freya, the new girl, was eager to fit in, perhaps too eager. Daniel, the tech whiz, who could hack anything. Sophie, the dreamer, who believed in magic, the wrong kind, as it turned out. And me, Ethan. I was the reader, the one who loved old stories, the one who, ironically, should have known better to mess with a cursed book. The book found us, as such things are wont to do, or perhaps we were led to it. It happened during one of our ill-advised explorations of the abandoned Hawthorne estate on the edge of town, a crumbling Victorian mansion rumored to be one of the Grimoire's previous resting places. We were there on a dare, fueled by cheap energy drinks and the invincibility of youth. Daniel, ever the explorer, found it tucked away in a loose floorboard in the dust-choked library, wrapped in oilcloth, tied with a rotting leather thong. It didn't look like much at first, smaller than expected. Its cover is a dark, featureless leather, cracked and worn smooth with age. No title, no author, just an uneasy coldness that emanated from it, even through the oilcloth. No way, Maya breathed, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. It can't be the book? Don't be stupid, Noah scoffed, though he reached for it with a visibly trembling hand. It's just some old journal. He untied the thong. The oilcloth fell away. The book lay in his hands, inert, yet somehow watchful. He opened it. The pages were parchment, brittle and yellowed, covered with spidery, archaic script, and unsettlingly detailed woodcut illustrations. Depictions of children playing seemingly innocent games, tag, hide and seek, blind man's bluff, but with subtle, horrifying details. Shadows with too many limbs, grinning figures lurking in the periphery, eyes that followed you from the page. And beneath each illustration, the rules, written in a language that was not quite Latin, not quite anything familiar, yet somehow understandable, instinctively so.
This is insane, Mia muttered, peering over Noah's shoulder. It's just old folklore, guys, Ben said, trying to sound dismissive, but his gaze kept flicking back to the disturbing images. The Reaper's Rondo, Freya read softly, pointing to a page depicting figures dancing in a circle around a hooded, skeletal silhouette holding a scythe. The rules say, join hands in the moonlight bright, dance until the fading light. One by one the Reaper calls, until the last one standing falls. A shiver ran down my spine. This wasn't just an old book. This felt alive, malignant. We shouldn't be doing this, Chloe whispered, her face pale. My grandma said this book, it feeds on fear. Or maybe it feeds on fun, Maya countered, a reckless gleam in her eye. Come on, it's just stories. What's the harm in trying one? Just a little one.
for a laugh. One game, just for a laugh. Famous last words. Against every parental warning, against every prickle of instinctual dread, against Chloe's quiet pleas, and even Noah's half-hearted protests, the decision was made. The allure of the forbidden, the thrill of tempting fate, the sheer adolescent arrogance of believing we were untouchable. It was a potent cocktail. We chose what seemed the most innocuous game, shadow tag. The illustration showed children running, their shadows elongated and distorted, with one shadowy figure larger and darker, its silhouette vaguely reminiscent of the Reaper from the Rondo page. The rules, as we deciphered them, were simple. Play tag in a place of deep shadows at twilight. The one who is it casts the Reaper's shadow. If that shadow touches you, you are claimed. The game ends when only one remains unclaimed, or when the Reaper is satisfied. Satisfied with what? Asked Jess, her phone already recording, though her voice wavered. Maya shrugged. Probably just means when we get bored. It's just a game, guys. We chose the old, overgrown cemetery bordering the Hawthorne estate as our playing field. Twilight was bleeding across the sky in hues of bruised purple and blood orange, casting long, eerie shadows from the weathered tombstones and gnarled ancient oaks. The air was still, heavy, and a chill, deeper than the evening temperature, settled over us. Liam, ever the eager one, volunteered to be it first. The Reaper's shadow, huh? Spooky. All right, run you lambs, he yelled, trying to inject some levity into the oppressive atmosphere. We scattered, laughing nervously, darting between the tombstones, the 15 of us a flurry of movement in the fading light. Liam chased us, his shadow stretching long and distorted behind him. It felt like any other game of tag at first. Adrenaline pumping, playful shouts, the thrill of the chase. Then Tom, one of the twins, tripped and fell near a crumbling mausoleum. Liam's shadow, elongated by the setting sun, swept over him. "Gotcha, Tom!" Liam panted, laughing. "You're it!" Tom didn't get up. He just lay there, staring blankly at the sky. "Tom? Dude, get up! You're it!" Will said, his twin nudging him with his foot. Tom didn't respond. His eyes were open but vacant. A faint, grayish pallor was creeping over his skin. And his shadow, which should have been stark against the pale grass in the dying light, was almost entirely gone. Just a faint, wispy outline remained, like smoke. And Liam? Liam was staring at his own hands, his expression of dawning horror. His shadow, the Reaper's shadow he had cast, seemed darker, somehow, more substantial than it before, and on his right hand, where his shadow had touched Tom, there was a faint, blackish smudge, like soot, that wouldn't rub off. "The book," Chloe choked, tears streaming down her face. "It wasn't just a story, it's real." The game was no longer a game. It was a trap, and we had sprung it. "We have to stop playing," Sophie cried, backing away. "We have to leave." But as she turned to run, a new shadow fell over her. Not from Liam. This one was taller, thinner, and seemed to coalesce from the deepening twilight itself. It wore a dark, hooded robe, and in one skeletal hand it carried a scythe that glinted with a cold, unholy light. The Reaper. It moved with an unnatural, silent grace, its shadow sweeping over Sophie. She let out a single choked gasp, her body going rigid, then crumpling to the ground like a discarded doll. Her shadow, too, began to fade. Two gone in minutes. Chaos erupted. Screams, blind panic. We scattered in all directions, no thought but escape. But the cemetery, once a playground, now felt like a hunting ground. The Reaper was among us, a silent, inexorable presence. Its shadow was its weapon. It didn't need to touch us physically. Its mere umbral presence was enough to steal the life, the very essence. I saw Ben, the confident jock, try to fight it. Swinging a heavy branch he'd picked up, the Reaper simply sidestepped, its shadow flicking out like a whip, brushing his arm, then stumbled, a look of confusion on his face, then collapsed, his own shadow dimming. Jess, still filming on her phone out of some horrified reflex, caught it all. Then the Reaper turned its hooded gaze towards her. Her phone clattered to the ground as she too was claimed, her last recording a distorted, terrifying image of a skeletal face and a glinting scythe. The whispers were everywhere now, seeming to emanate from the Reaper itself, from the very air around us, cold, dry, and full of a terrifying amusement. Run, little souls, run! The game is so much fun. Daniel, the tech whiz, tried to use logic. It's a projection, a hallucination, he yelled as he dodged its sweeping shadow. He didn't last long. Logic was no defense against this. Freya, the new girl, simply froze, her eyes wide with terror, and was taken without a sound. Liam, horrified by what he had unknowingly unleashed, tried to shield Maya. "Get behind me!" he yelled. The Reaper's shadow enveloped them both. Maya screamed his name, a sound of pure anguish before silence fell. 8 friends, gone, stolen by shadows. The remaining 7 of us, me, Chloe, Noah, Sam, Olivia, Ava, and Will, Tom's twin, now a ghost of himself, his face a mask of numb grief, found ourselves huddled behind a large angel-topped monument, hearts hammering, breaths ragged. "We have to get the book," Noah gasped, his face pale but resolute. "The rules! There must be a way to end the game! Or to fight back!" The book. We'd left it back at the Hawthorne estate in our haste. "Are you insane? We need to get out of here! Call the police!" "And tell them what?" Sam countered, his voice cracking. "That a spooky ghost from a book is killing us with its shadow? They'll lock us up!" He was right. No one would believe us. The decision was desperate, but it was our only hope. We had to get back to the book. Leaving the relative and rapidly diminishing safety of the cemetery felt like stepping into the Reaper's gaping maw. Every shadow seemed to writhe with unseen menace. The Reaper itself was a fleeting terror, sometimes visible as a dark silhouette against the moon, sometimes just an oppressive presence, a chilling whisper, a cold dread that settled in our bones. It picked off Ava first as we tried to cross an open stretch of lawn leading back to the estate. She was an artist, always seeing beauty in the darkness. There was no beauty in the way her shadow evaporated, leaving her a pale, empty husk. Will, Tom's twin, saw it happen. He just gave up. He stopped running, turned and faced the Reaper, his expression one of utter despair. "Take me too," he whispered. The Reaper obliged. 10. The 5 of us remaining, me, Chloe, Noah, Sam, and Olivia, finally stumbled into the decaying grandeur of the Hawthorne estate. The air inside was cold, stagnant, and thick with dust and the smell of old decay. And something else, a faint metallic tang, like old blood, stronger here than outside. "The library," Noah urged, leading the way. We found the grimoire lying where we'd left it, on a dusty table, its pages open to shadow tag. The illustrations seemed to mock us, the shadowy figures within it appearing more sinister, more knowing. Noah snatched up the book, his hands shaking as he flipped through the brittle pages, searching for something, an escape clause, a counter curse, anything. "There has to be something!" he muttered, his voice raw with desperation. The whispers swirled around us now, seeming to emanate from the book itself, as well as from the shadowy corners of the room. No escape. The game must be completed. The Reaper always collects. Then, from the darkened doorway of the library, a figure emerged, the Reaper. It seemed larger here within the confines of the old house, its presence more suffocating. Its skeletal face, usually obscured by shadow, was briefly illuminated by a stray moonbeam through a grimy window. Its eye sockets were empty, yet they burned with a cold, dead light. Its lipless mouth was frozen in a silent, eternal grin. Sam, in a burst of panic bravado, grabbed a heavy candelabra from the table and threw it. It passed right through the Reaper, clattering uselessly against the far wall. The Reaper's shadow flicked out, and Sam crumpled, a choked gasp escaping his lips. His shadow began to fade instantly. Olivia screamed his name and lunged towards him, but Noah pulled her back. "Don't! You can't touch him! Or it!" The Reaper turned its attention to us. Chloe was sobbing, pressed against a bookcase, her eyes screwed shut. Olivia was shaking, her face a mask of terror and grief. Noah, his eyes still glued to the book, suddenly gasped. "Wait! Here! The Unmaking!" He pointed to a page with a complex circular diagram and more of the archaic script. It says, "To unbind the game, the source must be undone. The book itself by fire consumed, its power unspun. But a price, a heavy price, a willing soul must pay, to draw the Reaper's final gaze and lead its hunger astray." "A sacrifice?" I choked out. "It seems so," Noah said, his voice grim. "One of us has to willingly draw its attention, give it a target, while the others destroy the book." Fire. We needed fire. I remembered the old, disused fireplace in the main hall. There might be kindling, matches. "I'll go," I said, the words out before I could fully process them. Chloe and Olivia looked at me, their eyes wide. Noah nodded slowly, his expression a mixture of gratitude and dread. Distracted. "Give us time." As I turned to leave the library, the Reaper glided towards Chloe, its shadow stretching. "No!" Olivia screamed, shoving Chloe aside and stepping into the path of the shadow herself. "Take me, you bastard!" The shadow enveloped her. She stood, defiant for a heart-stopping second. Then her strength seemed to drain away, her shadow vanishing into the Reaper's own. 12. Chloe was a wreck, but Noah, his face set with grim determination, was already tearing pages from the grimoire, stuffing them into the center of the room. "We need to burn it now." I ran. Out of the library, down the dusty hall, towards the main foyer. The Reaper, its attention momentarily diverted by Olivia's sacrifice, was a step behind me, its cold presence a palpable weight on my back. "You cannot escape the game," it whispered, its voice a dry rustle in my ears. I found the fireplace, and miraculously, a tin of old dry matches on the mantelpiece. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely strike one. Finally, a tiny flame. I turned back towards the library. The Reaper was in the hallway now, between me and them. "Noah! Chloe! Now!" I screamed. I could hear Noah frantically trying to light the pile of pages, Chloe sobbing beside him. The Reaper glided toward me, its scythe raised. Its shadow, dark and absolute, fell over me. I felt an icy coldness, a profound weariness, a draining of life. My own shadow began to flicker, to dim. This was it. My price. But then, a roar of flame erupted from the library. Sound of a whoosh of fire, a high-pitched, unearthly shriek that is a blend of rage, pain, and something like release. The Reaper stopped. It turned its hooded head towards the library, its skeletal form flickering, distorting. The shriek it emitted was not just of pain, but of unraveling. The coldness around me lessened, the draining sensation eased. My shadow, though faint, seemed to stabilize. I stumbled back into the library. The grimoire was a raging inferno in the center of the room. Noah and Chloe huddled back against the wall, their faces illuminated by the orange glow. And the Reaper. It was dissolving. Its form was becoming translucent, its edges blurring, the dark robes and skeletal features fading like smoke in a strong wind. Its final drawn-out shriek echoed through the mansion, then silence. It was gone. The fire consumed the book, page by cursed page, until all that remained was a pile of black, smoking ash. As the last ember died, a profound exhaustion settled over us. Me, Noah, Chloe, the only 3 left. 12 friends, gone. Their shadows, their lives, devoured by a game. The aftermath was a nightmare of a different kind. How do you explain 12 missing teenagers? How do you describe a book that summons a soul-stealing entity? We told them a fragmented, terrified version of the truth. About the book, about a game gone horribly wrong. We left out the Reaper, the fading shadows. Even we knew how insane that sounded. They found the Hawthorne estate. They found the ashes in the library. They found Jess's phone, its last recording a terrifying, distorted glimpse of something. They searched for days, weeks. They found nothing. No bodies, no trace. Just like all the other times the grimoire had surfaced in Oak Haven's history. They called it a tragic accident, a mass delusion, a prank that escalated. They said our friends ran away. They said we were suffering from trauma. They didn't believe a word about a cursed book or deadly games. We were the survivors, the haunted. Chloe never fully recovered. She lives in a world of shadows and whispers, afraid of her own reflection. Noah dedicated his life to studying the occult, trying to understand what we faced, to ensure it never returned. He pores over ancient texts, searching for any mention of the Reaper or other cursed artifacts. He says the grimoire might have been one of many. And me? I live with the ghosts of my friends. I see their faces in my dreams and hear their laughter in the quiet moments. I feel the lingering chill of the Reaper's shadow. I know the game isn't truly over. The book is gone, yes, but the thing it summoned, what if it's still out there, unbound, waiting for a new invitation, a new game to play? Some books are gateways, some games are rituals, and some prices, once paid, can never be refunded. We played, and the Reaper collected. All but 3. For now.
And so the rain begins to subside. For now. The echoes of those desperate games, those chilling encounters linger in the air, don't they? A reminder that some doors are best left unopened, some warnings best heeded. We've journeyed through haunted forests, cursed grounds, and faced entities that defy explanation. From the vengeful spirit of Lisa to the ancient hunger of the forest heart, and the cruel games of Kael and the Reaper, each tale a testament to the darkness that lies just beyond our understanding, sometimes awakened by the most innocent of actions. Thank you for joining us here at Nocturnal Nightmares TV, for braving these nocturnal narratives with us. The night is deep, and your thoughts are always welcome. What part of tonight's collection will haunt your dreams? Which creature or cursed game resonated most deeply? Head down to the comments section. Share your fears, your theories, your own eerie experiences. The community of fellow nightmare enthusiasts is waiting. If these stories kept you on the edge of your seat, or perhaps huddled under the covers, please show your appreciation by hitting that like button. It helps the channel reach more brave souls like yourself. And if you haven't already joined our Legion of the Night, be sure to subscribe and tap that notification bell. There are always more shadows to explore, more nightmares to unveil. Remember, even when the rain stops, the darkness
remains. It watches. It waits. And sometimes it just wants to play another game. Until next time, try to get some sleep, if you can.